Small business owners are so busy running around chasing a bunch of nonsense that they don't really make significant progress. Or if they would just pick one thing and just go all in on that one thing, they would get there way faster and make way more money. He goes as a general, or that's probably the biggest. If you just ask me for one thing to make money faster, that would be the one thing that I'd recommend you do, is be very clear on what you're saying no to. And so I'm trying to apply his general philosophy, and I'm trying to use first principles to get there. And you're right, first principles may not be the best tool for that. It may not be.
Well, if you take a situation of having a successful business.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is where we discuss current events, personal growth, and any other random topic that crosses our minds. Our goal is to have a meaningful discussion that help us to see the topics we discuss more clearly. Our hope is we can help you expand your self-awareness, develop your critical thinking, and learn to be less reactive to the world around you. And most importantly, remember, be curious. If you like what you hear, like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment. We want to hear what you think.
Well, Chris, happy Friday, Chris. Happy podcast day.
Happy podcast Friday. Happy broadcast Friday. Podcast Friday.
That's right. So, Chris, check this out. This is episode, if I'm not mistaken, episode number 33. Is that correct?
33, yes.
Well, 33 episodes of this. That's correct. And Chris, something else exciting. I'm sure you've seen this because you look at the analytics, but we've got over 500,000 views.
Yeah. They worship when they're on the long form content.
Me too. And then
People can stand us for about 30 seconds, it sounds.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a stretch. Maybe 15. And then I think in terms of like a Joe Rogan podcast or something, he cranks it out and he'll get like 8 million views in like one day or something, some ridiculous thing. So
yeah, well,
there's levels, Chris. There's levels to everything. But hey, man, you got to.
There is levels. Actually, I was thinking about that because I was talking to someone yesterday, and I was actually talking specifically about branding myself.
Yeah. And
how, as a generalist, it's hard to brand yourself because you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And he was mentioning, who's that guy on YouTube? Patrick Bet David, I think is the guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like him. He's
right?
pretty good.
And how he has long form podcasts and he interviews people and he just asks a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if maybe we need to ask more questions. I think we do talk a lot and we do ask questions and we ask hard questions, but I'm wondering if we need to ask more questions.
Well, I mean, we could try. It's like I look at the analytics and I don't see anything. I don't think we've got over 100 views on any of our long form ones. So
no. By the way, your voice was a little quiet there.
Oh, okay. There we go. Sorry about that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to start digging in to the analytics at one point. I mean, right now my focus is on my other new business that I'm starting and AI stuff. So that's where my focus is. But maybe I'll query AI and see if it's got strategies for doing. I don't know how the YouTube algorithm works exactly. And I think if we want to exploit it, we have to understand how it works. In fact, I'd like to talk about that. In fact, I want to go down this rabbit hole for a while, actually.
All right.
I want to go down the rabbit hole of understanding things and understanding things at a deep level in order to get the best out of that thing. And I want to start with a little story. I want to start with story time. So I don't know this personally. This is just, I heard this on a YouTube video and it's about a Navy SEAL team. And Navy SEALs, they going through BUDS training, they basically just torture them, right? And they call it surf torture, and they make them like carry logs up and down and carry boats on their head.
Stay awake for days, that sort of stuff, yeah.
And all sorts of stuff. And these guys are just, I wish that I could just even someday even get a tiny fraction of their discipline and mindset. I mean, that would be awesome. So anyways, up until that point, I'm just in awe at these guys. So here's a story. The story is is that they had some sort of race where I don't know how many guys fit in a boat. Would it maybe 6, 8, 10 guys in a boat? I have no idea. Hey, if anybody knows, if you're a SEAL or knows anything, put in the comments. Like correct us. Let us know what's going on because I don't know. Try not to be too hard on me because I'm just this is just to illustrate a point. So, and this is a point about leadership. And so they make them do these race things, right? And so the top boat with the best leader and the best guys, they came back number one. And of course they won, right? They win everything. They've just got the right mindset. And so what happened though is on the last boat, basically the losers of the losers in the very last boat, they came back. And so what they did as an experiment is they left all the worker bees in the boat and they took out the boat leader and replaced them, just the one person replaced them with the leader that came in first. And just from a leadership change. Now, then they reran the experiment. Now, they didn't come in first, but they came in like second or third. I mean, a significant increase in where they were before, solely based on a change in leadership. And that's significant. I mean, that means the leader matters in a very significant way. And I guess what I want to talk about is what did he have versus what did the losing leader have or not have? Because he knew something that the other guy didn't know. And part of, I think, what it is, I think he had a deep understanding of how things work. And my hunch is, Chris, like because we were talking before the show earlier today about trying to understand AI and how to make it work and certain frustrations both of us were having. Like, I'm telling it what to do, but it just won't do it. And my hunch is we don't have a deep understanding of how it works, how it thinks of the problem. We don't have the level of experience. So I'd like to talk about that. Is there a way not to, I'm not asking for us to talk about how to shortcut things, but I'm asking us how to provide an optimal path forward to learn something and understand something at a deep level. And my hunch is that there's some techniques work better than other techniques. And I'd like to maybe flush those out because when I'm starting this new business thing, I need to get to high quality answers as quickly as possible. And so if there's some techniques or strategies that I'd like to learn, I really want to learn them. I'm highly motivated at this point.
So one thing that comes to mind when you talk about understanding how things work is determining how deep you need to go.
Yeah, right.
If I've got a box full of Legos,
yeah,
and I'm trying to build something out of the Legos, understanding what the bricks are, the sizes, how they fit together, how I can fit them together to make them stronger, all that sort of thing makes sense. Going down to the molecular level or the atomic level of how those Legos are built, really not going to help me any.
No.
Right. So understanding how something works really is there's a threshold at which it makes sense and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right.
And I think one of the more obvious ones would be maybe something we talked about or we argued about either last week or the week before when we were talking about maybe it was offline, but we talked about who, not how, right? I want to know how things work and I want to be able to do them. And you're like, well, I don't care how it works. I just need it to work, and therefore I'm going to hire the person to do it, or hire the tool to do it, or the like.
Right.
And I think my general view on this is it's always better to know how. It's not necessarily time or cost logical. The ROI on it may not make sense to go into the how. Right. So again, if you understood the atomic structure of Legos, that's probably it's better to have more knowledge than less. Do you need the atomic structure of Legos to build a Lego structure? No. And so I guess it's a little it's not quite as clear cut as that in many situations, particularly in business situations or the like. But always knowing how is better. But you still need to make an assessment of how far down the detailed understanding needs to be.
Well, and I'm going to push back against pretty much everything you've said. on that.
Yeah, because I'm right and you're always against what's right. But yeah,
Exactly. There we go.
you're still a little on the quiet side, by the way, Scott.
Well, hang on, Chris. I don't know that there's anything I can do about it. I'll just try to speak up. Okay, is that better? Am I
Yeah, a little
close to
bit.
the microphone? Is it? Hang on a second. If I turn this knob, hang on.
That's clearer.
Is this doing anything to the volume? Is it going up?
No,
How about now? Is it going up now?
no, nothing.
Not making any change. Okay, I don't know what this knob does. How about now? Can you hear any difference in this?
Yeah, you're closer though, so that makes a big difference.
So this is better than this is.
Oh, wait,
louder?
it kind of blew out there for a second.
How about now? Is this good?
That's low. That's very low.
Okay, how about this? I'm turning it the other way.
That's going up. That's going up.
Okay, that's all the way. That's all you get, Chris. It's like,
Huh.
sorry. Okay,
Does
I'll
not
try
seem to be as loud as I'm used to.
Well, okay. So there's a setting in my. How do I control my microphone? There's like a little slider, right, that I can control. Maybe I need to turn it
Yeah,
up
you're maxed out according to what I see.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. This is as good as you're going to get, I think. I'll do some tests later. And then in when we export the audio, there's a little switch that I normally export. It says normalize audio, so it'll actually it'll bring it up. So hopefully that'll improve it. Okay. What was I talking? Oh yeah. Oh, that's right.
You're saying you're going to disagree with almost everything I said.
Yeah. I just want to basically start attacking you about all your things you just said. Okay. So you made one comment that you said it's, if I remember right, let me get your language, something to the effect of it's always better to know the how. And
I think as a principle, it's always better to know more. Yes.
always better to know more. Okay. Always. I don't know if I
It may
agree
not
with
be
you
worth
all.
it may not be worth the effort of knowing more. That's a different assessment. But as a general rule, is it better to know more or not know more? It's always better to know more, I would say. Give me a situation where that's not true.
I'm going to leave that alone just for a second, right? Because I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings of pushback. I normally just, when I feel something, then I want to push back against it. Okay, let's go back to the statement about we're building something with Legos.
Yep.
And I mean, let's say you don't need a PhD in material science to understand how to put Legos together. In fact, I would view it as a mistake if you're allocating resources of a PhD material science to build with Legos, because I would think that you're misallocating resources, because it seems like that person would be better allocated to solve a much harder problem. Considering that you don't have unlimited capability, you don't have unlimited material science PhDs, right? So you got to use them just on the right problems, the problems that will give the most impact. I mean, so that's one of my general thoughts.
Okay, I'm not quite seeing how it relates to my scenario, but okay.
Okay, yeah. What else were you wrong about? Let's see. Let me try to replay this in my mind. I think it depends on what level you're operating at. So you're like, it's better to know the how, but isn't it better to know the what? Usually, the what you're trying to achieve, other than how to do it, because you might have tremendous competence to solve a particular problem, but you need to evaluate, is that the right problem to be solving? That seems like maybe a more important question to allocate resources. And I'm basing this constraint on the fact that you don't have unlimited resources. That's kind of an unspoken constraint. And I don't know if you had that constraint in, or were you constraintless in that statement?
So, as I said, it's always better to know more. Sometimes that's hard, that you have to make an assessment whether it's worth making that effort to know more, which is, if that's a constraint, if constraint is time or money, that's a constraint, right? That's your ROI. That's your judgment. So I think I covered the idea that as a general principle by itself, it's better to know more. There are times when you may not be able to learn more for a variety of reasons. Those would be your constraints.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think as a general rule, if if everything being equal, right? Everything else being equal, I get a choice of knowing less or knowing more.
Yeah.
I will take knowing more every single time.
So
Absolutely.
you did a couple other things too. You added in a problem definition, the what not how,
Yeah.
or what versus how, and I never brought in the what. I didn't care what you were building. It had nothing to do with it. Had no, the goal of what you were doing had nothing to do with the how, right? And so really, you were adding additional constraints to a situation. You were somehow assuming that we had an unclear what, and I didn't even need a what in my scenario. I was just making a general principled statement that knowing more is better than not knowing more.
Yeah. So here's
So that's my okay, but let me go back. That's my building block. My building block is I've got an assumption, a principle, a belief that is better to know more than to know less. That's it.
in absence of any other constraints.
Yes, and usually a principle or a building block or a belief starts off with very simplistic constraints around it. And then as you add other constraints, then you begin to have to change and alter that. So now if you say, but Chris, you only have an hour a day to spend on this, how, you're not going to be able to go into the level of detail of understanding how that you want to. Oh, okay. So now with only an hour of effort to be able to put into it, my level of of depth of knowledge of research of understanding how is not going to be the same as if I put in 2 hours a day.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so then hang on a second. Let me think this through actually just a
Hang
little
on.
bit. So you made a statement. You didn't indicate any constraints. So then what I should have done at that moment, actually, I mean, I do enjoy saying that you're wrong. I mean, that's just pure pleasure, right? That's just fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but throwing that out, then I need to come back and say, okay, when you say that, what constraints are you putting around that problem? I need to come back with clarifying questions because you made a statement that's
Mm-hmm.
just sort of floating out in space. And in my mind, I need some more context around it to
But I
evaluate it.
also gave you a caveat saying you have to do an ROI on whether it's worth knowing more.
Yeah, but that
I
was
actually
after
gave
the
you
fact. That was after. That
it was
wasn't
in
in
the
the
initial
initial
it was
thing.
in the initial statement, and then you questioned it, and I said I actually said that. So no, it
Oh,
was it
that's
was actually
interesting.
stated. So you didn't hear that part of it, but
That
I
that
did.
might be.
I generally try to put an out for the outliers of a situation. So
I need to go
I
back
would
and
say
recode
I
it.
can't
Yeah.
say 100% of the time it's worth knowing more, knowing that there are going to be conditions that might affect that. But assuming other conditions don't apply, it's always better to know more.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I need to go back and re-listen to this because either I've got a hearing problem or you've got a speaking problem. That's so interesting.
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter though. In either case, I still, if something like a little red flag goes off my, I still need to ask, okay, Chris, hang on. Let's, I need to get more context around this particular
Yeah.
problem.
So let's go back to another thing you said. You said it's a waste of resources to put a material science PhD building Legos. And again, you brought that up like somehow that was part of my scenario where I mentioned it's better to know more than not to know
Yeah,
more.
I did do that. I will agree with you on that part.
So
Yes, I did
so
do that.
so I wasn't saying anything about the quality of the person doing the Lego building. I wasn't
Yeah.
talking about how much time and effort it takes or whether the problem that they're solving requires the level of intelligence or intellectual capability uh, that they're overqualified to do the work. I wasn't saying any of that. I just said as a general principle, it is
Yeah.
better to know more, which is to know how the world works is one of the things to know more about than to not.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to expose a fundamental flaw in my thinking that it just having this conversation came up to me is that it doesn't matter if you're wrong or right? It doesn't matter because what I was trying to do is I was trying to get to force you into defining the problem in the way that I'm most comfortable understanding it in. That's what
You
I
do
was
this a
trying to
lot.
do.
You tell me, well, what are the constraints? What are you doing? What are we trying to build? What's the end goal? And I'm like, Scott, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to get to a core principle of how the world works, and from there, I use that as a building block to solve any problem. Not that problem. You're solving one problem. I'm trying to build an understanding of the world that will let me solve every problem.
So I guess the question is, since we started this thing, is that the best approach? Or maybe not. Is it a good approach? Maybe that's not even sort of best, but is it a good approach? Because remember, we started within how do we learn as quickly as possible? So your answer to that is to say, let's start with a small building block that's not tied to anything else and sort of get a yes, no on that as a starting point.
Yeah, that's first principles thinking in my mind. It's a building block.
Okay, that I don't know that I will. Hang on. I guess we need to find. Hey, let's go back to this. Okay, so what do you define as first principle? Because here's what I think, Chris. This is the reason I want to go down this. I'm not interested in being right anymore. I was for a while, but I've gotten over that whole thing right now. I just wonder is. I think we could both agree on this that first principles is a very powerful way of thinking. It's a very powerful thinking framework. So the question is the way you're defining first principles the best way to define it? And so now my question to you is, how do you define first principles?
In my mind, the way I think of this, I'm going to give you a first definition and then I'm going to give you a first definition of how I think it's meant to be and then my take on that. So slight differentiation.
Okay.
So I believe that the first principles are the facts that you can measure in some manner that occur in the world. So being able to see an object fall and understand that there's gravity. That would be a first principle, that there's gravity. And then even understanding what causes gravity, mass, and being near a planet and the mass of the planet causes the gravitational pull, all that kind of thing, right? So, but gravity, you could say gravity is a first principle. You could go down to the sub pieces, like I just said, understanding how mass causes that, but I'm not sure that you need to do that. But then you're saying you can't get away from gravity. Right? No matter what you build physically, gravity is going to have an impact. I want to build a 10-story tall structure out of toothpicks. Not going to happen probably because gravity is going to have a say in that. Right? That sort of thing. So that would be something I would call first principle. If it's some other measurable event, now we can talk about whether the speed of light is truly a constant or not. But I would say, in the way I would think about the world, that would be a principle too. But then even building up from there, I would say like the wind, when it blows against something, pushes that thing. Whether that thing moves or not, I'm not talking about. But it's going to cause force on that thing. So to me, these are the things that that are the building blocks of understanding physically how the world works. Now, I assume there's biochemistry and there's other aspects we can understand. When we start getting into things like psychology and how the mind works, I think there's a little bit of principles in there that probably hold true most of the time. But that's a little harder, I think, because I'm not sure that we can measure it the same every time. And so when it comes to, so what I view this is, it's the building blocks that you do not delve deeper into on a regular basis, or that you need to delve deeper into to be able to construct whatever we're going off of. So a belief is a first principle. It may not be good in the sense that I may have a belief that's wrong. I may have a belief that the color red is dangerous, right? And I could build my whole world off this idea and stay away from things that are red. Obviously, that would be a screwed up first principle. But beliefs are, in my mind, principles that you use. They are first principles for you in the moment, and they go beyond the physical, scientific first principles. So in this case, the principle I'm trying to build, the first principle I'm trying to build is it's better to know more than not to know more. And so that's a principle of how I build my thinking almost everywhere. It's one of the things that I always have to question, because what is the ROI? Should I spend another 6 months studying this? Should I spend another $10, $1,000 studying this or learning this or whatever, right? And there's always a point where, no, it's time to pull the trigger, right? We talk about that. It's time to act. So it is in some ways a limiting principle, but in other ways it's a freeing principle, because it allows me to get to a point where the base knowledge I expect to have on any topic tends to be more than the average person because I've believed that knowing more is beneficial to me.
Okay, I want to spend more time on this because I think I'm not sure I fully heard everything you said, but I heard enough of it. That's really interesting because well, let me okay, first of all, let's talk about ROI for a second. So my belief is this is what my belief is that if we understand first principles well, that can be a tool to accelerate understanding. I mean, is that a fair statement, or how much would you agree with that statement?
Understanding. I'm not sure I'd use the word understanding. It's a
Okay.
tool to develop.
Maybe how to use the tool. I guess what I'm getting at, does it make spin? Okay, if I'm trying to get good at everything as a general rule, it seems like first principles is a very important tool to know how to use to get to my objective, right? That's a
It's
fundamental
a
thing.
way to build, I guess. I don't like using this word. A pure solution to something that has fewer areas for misunderstanding, fewer areas for mistakes, because usually the idea is when you start with first principles, you go to you. I got a slightly alteration to the definition. It's the thing that you and I agree upon at the base level.
So I'm gonna read this. So I typed this in the chat, right? I'm gonna
Maybe
read
not.
this actually. What chat says about this. So it says first principles is a problem solving and thinking approach that involves breaking down complex ideas or problems, sorry, into their most fundamental parts. The basic truths are first principles and then building up from there rather than relying on assumptions, analogies, or conventions.
Mhm.
That is a powerful way. So then if I'm going to try to learn new skills as quickly as possible, I think in my mind understanding how to use first principles is a very powerful tool to have in my toolbox.
And to an extent, everyone who problem solves does this. The question is, how far down towards the first principle are you going? So even people who have whacked out opinions on things, they are reasoning. The problem we've got is whatever principles or baseline they're using to make their judgments aren't validated, aren't true, aren't actually actual reality, and because of that, they end up in a different endpoint than you or I would. And even if you and I don't agree 100% of the first principles, when we stick to science, we tend to be able to come to agreeable first principles. When we start getting outside of science, then it becomes tougher.
Yeah, it is a more complex problem. Exactly. So I'm going to continue reading this because this is for my bit because I really want to get my brain wrapped around this and really understand. So here's an example, famous one, right? Elon Musk used first principles to rethink the cost of rockets. Instead of accepting that rockets are expensive, he broke it down. What are rockets made of? Aluminum, titanium, copper, other materials. What's the cost of each raw material? And so much cheaper than buying a finished rocket. So from that, using first principles, he concluded that building rockets from scratch could drastically reduce the cost of building a rocket.
There's a lot there that I don't think is being said.
Well, I'm just reading off ChatGPT.
I know. Understanding what makes a rocket, and then going back read the second part again. He concluded what?
Okay, so I'm going to read this whole thing again, right? So Elon Musk used first principles to rethink the cost of rockets. The problem at this point that they're not saying was that rockets were really expensive to launch. And his thought was, I wonder if I could make them cheaper, right? I
Yeah,
wonder if we
sure.
could do it cheaper, right? So instead of just accepting blindly that rockets are expensive, he's like, let me break it down to first principles. He's like, what are rockets made of? The materials. What's the cost of those materials? And then he concluded using first principles that, wait a minute, I could build rockets from scratch and I could radically reduce the cost. And
There's a huge amount of logic missing there. It's a huge amount. So the second question would be, all right, rockets cost $1 million.
Let's say $1 million. A little more
and
expensive.
and it's only made out of metal and fuel and whatever. It only costs $100,000 of material and labor to make it.
Yeah, right. Well, there's labor in there too, of course, right?
I just said labor and materials, $100,000.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a $900,000. So then what do you do? He's like, I can make it cheaper. My thought is, what the hell is costing $900,000? Because
that's a different question. That's a
no.
different
What it comes down to is you need to, if you're going to take apart, if you're saying the problem is the rockets cost too much.
Yeah.
Right? Because those are things you're going to have hurdles of. If for example, $800,000 of that is licensing fees or working with or government fees or something like that, or taxes, I don't know what those costs are. You can't exclude those. Those are part of what it is. Right? So
no, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm
so the way it's describing it is a simple, I looked at the pieces. It's easy to make. I can do that cheaper. Well, that's a pretty damn easy thing to say. There's a level of complexity in that thought that isn't captured in that description.
Okay, fair enough. I 100% agree with you, right? Because there's more expensive than just materials and labor.
Now,
right?
if what he said was he looked at the inputs to make a rocket and said the actual cost should be something half the cost of what it is today. Mm-hmm. I think I can do it that way, cheaper, better that way.
And I don't want to get too technical, because what I'm trying to get in my mind is understanding this principle in a simple form first, right? And so that I can get the basic idea of it. And I'm sure it's going to become more complex. But it's like ideally what I want to do for me personally, Chris.
So what was the problem he was solving? Because let's get back to your problem definition.
Rockets are expensive. And just blindly accepting that this is just how it's always been done, and this is just what they cost, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is I want to start to have more tools in my toolbox that I can reliably use to think through things. And first principles sounds like a really important tool.
So I think the value of first principles is it requires you to rebuild from the building blocks, as opposed to trying to rejigger an existing process.
Yeah,
right.
That's
so
exactly right.
So if you started with rockets are expensive, let's see if we can make them cheaper, and you just rejiggered the process, maybe you get 10 or 20% savings. I don't know, some number, right? But if you start back from the basics and you strip away a bunch of stuff that you didn't need, maybe you get it down to 50% savings or something like that.
Could be,
right?
yeah. You're just
The idea is there's a lot of the world is complex, and there's a lot of things that occur along the way, and by going to first principles, you kind of go back to the minimum viable product, the minimal basic aspect of whatever you're trying to think through, right? And then maybe at the end of it, you end up exactly where the current solution is, and you go, crap, okay, so that was a valid solution. Or maybe you end up somewhere else entirely, because all the stuff that's been loaded onto these ideas over the years, you just ignored because you didn't need them.
Yeah. Let me keep going, right? Let me throw some more information at you. So then, here it says how to use first principles thinking. Mm-hmm. So first of all, we got to identify assumptions, right? What are you taking for granted? Which is what you just said. It's like, it costs $1 million. And you got to understand, everybody listening to this, we're not saying it's $1 million. We're just using this as an example to illustrate something. Like, don't come back and say rockets are way more expensive than. I mean, you can if you want, but that's not the point. We're just using an example. So identify assumptions. What are you taking for granted? And then break it down. What are the unquestionable truths? And then rebuild from the ground up. Given those truths, what's the best solution? So in my mind, another way of describing this was just like, let's start with a blank sheet of paper, right? Let's not take any assumptions. Let's just like rebuild this thing from scratch, and let's see where we get to.
That's one way to do it, yeah.
Kind of the same thing, right? I think it's saying the same thing as first principles thinking. And so then why it matters.
Well, it's like, what do we know?
What do we know? Yeah, if we had to restart over.
What do we think? So assume. What do we know? Right. What do we assume? So what do we think? And then from there, you try to construct whatever you're trying to build.
Yeah. I'm going to read a few more things that are. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say my belief that knowing more is better than not knowing more, to me, is something I feel I can defend in almost any situation. Therefore, I can defend, and I don't say in any situation, I can defend. And therefore, in my mind, I take that as an altruistic principle that I would associate with a core fundamental principle for me.
Yeah, so if I was redefining and re-saying what you would say, I would say for me to be a little safer, I would say as a starting point, this is where we start. And then as we start throwing additional constraints on, now we may shift away from that initial start. But as a starting point, as a general rule, it's a good place to start. I mean,
But this goes back to that argument we had about how to have a spacecraft re-enter the Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I kept saying, I don't, you were adding constraints from the start, and I'm saying I don't need those constraints yet. Those constraints come later, like the fact that the astronaut has to survive re-entry, right? And I'm I'm like, no, from a first principle thinking standpoint, you don't even introduce that yet. That's a constraint we add later.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Actually, I mean, I still want to push back on that.
You were constraining because it was the problem solved. It was a part of the problem that you needed to solve was they needed to survive re-entry. I wasn't solving the problem yet. I was trying to understand the world.
Yeah, and my errand thinking was what was my errand thinking is to here's my errand thinking, right? That of course that's going to be a constraint, right? We want the dude to live actually. And I'm like, but the proper way to think about it is let's not put any constraints on it. Let's just
that's where I was starting from. It's physics.
Because it could because it could be that if we automatically apply that constraint, that could lead us down a wrong road that may not be an important problem to solve. Now,
may not be the best solution, may not give us the out of the box thinking everyone always wants, right? The idea here is the constraint. I don't apply constraints until I have to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense actually, because you could go in a meeting and say, well, okay, so I got a question. We got this thing figured out. So just a question is, so do you want the guys to live when they come back? Yeah, okay. I thought, but I mean, let's just be very clear, because it may come back and say, it's not that important. People are disposable, right? We don't care that much. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit harsh, but okay, all right, okay, fair enough.
See, the thought I have here is this: if you say I need to know the sales numbers in North America for this product that is the company you work at, so you study the sales numbers in North America for that product, and you go to that meeting, and you're like, I got it down. I can give you all the numbers, blah 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 blah. And the boss goes, okay, how does that compare with European numbers?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, had you gone and studied the company's global sales and understood the global sales and the whatever, you can now pivot on a dime and answer that question.
If you have, yeah, right.
But the idea being, that's why I want to know the how of what I'm looking at. I want to understand as much of what I'm looking at right now so that I can adjust on the fly as much as possible. That's why the constraint doesn't matter to me, because you can change the constraint at the last minute and I can adjust.
Well, you'd have to do other research. I mean, you can't.
No, that's the thing. You may not need to do another research if you've got a real understanding of how things work. You pull this lever over here. If I don't know how the world works, I got to go back and recalculate everything and research everything. If I understand how everything works, you pull this lever here, I go, oh, that's just a little, it just changes right here a little bit, a slight bit. That's why I want to understand everything, is because then I can shift on a dime when you start changing constraints on me, which I expect people to change constraints on me.
Yeah, so it depends on then, but that's assuming there's no constraints on the problem, because it might be we need to get to a solution as quick as possible. But if that constraint is not stated, then I think it's totally fair that you're going to go do that, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's why your ROI comes into play. It's like, how much money do I have to spend on this? How much time do I have to spend on this? How many resources do I have to spend on this? Right?
Yeah.
And then you've got to decide how many resources are required to implement it. And so so usually we don't have unlimited resources to spend on something, which is why
in fact, I would say never that we have unlimited resources.
And often we are rewarded for spending as little resources as possible to get a solution. But then what you're going to get is a solution that's boxed in by the limited knowledge you've got.
Yeah. So here's one underlying truth then, right? It's like, this is just something very, very common. Like when you're prompting GPT, when you're talking to GPT, the general rule is, one rule is that, well, I think there's two approaches, and I've taken two approaches, right? One is just give it the whole kitchen sink and do everything you can possibly think of in one prompt, right? That's one solution to the problem. A second solution is only give it the bare amount of information, and if it doesn't get back what you want, then keep iterating. Oh, now this and now that and now that until you finally start to narrow down on a particular problem. And I guess those are two approaches. They're probably both fine. It's like, how do we choose which approach, and when do we choose each approach, right?
I don't think I do either of those.
Well, you were telling me the other day how long your prompts are.
Yeah, but they're not one prompt that does everything. You know, my prompts are, 2, 3, 4 minutes long of me talking to it and in text format. So they'll be half a page, 2 pages long. That's one prompt. It responds to me. I do the next prompt. So I actually have very long prompts with a lot of information, a lot of context, a lot of logic and thinking involved in it. And then when it comes back with a clarification, or with its interpretation, I'll clarify, I'll change it, I'll go in a different direction. I'll say, actually, that doesn't quite work out. Let's go in this direction instead, right? And I'm constantly changing the way I look at the world as I interact with these prompts.
Yeah, no, I do too, actually. The question is okay, so let's say that's your style of prompting, right? And
Yeah.
it may not be the best style. I don't know. It could be the best one. I don't know. I'm honestly being curious at this point because my constraint is I want to go to Chat GPT or solve any problem as quickly as possible. That's my underlying constraint usually when I come into a problem. I want to get to the answer as quick as possible. So then giving any other information with that constraint, I'm like, well, that takes more time, so I don't want to do that. I want to get to the answer as quick as possible. That's typically where I start from. Where you don't have that same constraint on you.
No.
Okay,
to me, I want to have I need to build a baseline of knowledge enough to where I feel comfortable that whatever is created, I have the ability to explain, to understand, to adjust, to adapt as needed.
Okay, so here's a question then. If you're using first principles thinking as a guiding principle to like interact with chat, what would first principles do? Like how somebody using first principles, how would they write the prompt?
So the first principle is something that you can't change. You can't misinterpret. You can't say it's one thing or another. It is what it is, and the person who's using it has to accept that this is something I can't go beyond. I can't reinterpret this. I can't change this. This is the building block I've got. Right?
You got to define.
To me,
give me an example. I don't understand what you're saying.
If I say gravity is a principle of what I'm building.
Okay,
it's a first
gravity
principle.
is one of the principles. You need to.
You can't disagree with my gravity and come to the same conclusion as me. You've got to agree that gravity is a first principle in the thinking. Now, I don't want to say this is with us talking together. So with me, I can't interpret gravity as, well, it's a first principle, but I can ignore it sometimes.
So I don't. Okay. So here I'm going to disagree with you, right? I want clarification. No, I don't. Okay. I'm not going to say right. So I don't think that gravity is a first principle, because first principle is a mechanism of thinking about things. Gravity would be a constraint, right?
Gravity, is it a constraint?
Yeah,
because it's the way the world works. It is something that we're supposed to all agree upon. That or okay, you want to go simpler than that. If I drop an object, if I let go of an object, just a not aerodynamic, no nothing, just drop an object, it's going to fall to the ground and hit the ground.
Yeah, not necessarily. It depends on what your object is.
So then you can't agree that that's a first principle. If we were to work on a project together and we can't agree that that's a principle, a first principle to work off of, what's the next level down from there?
Well, here's the thing, though. I think let's go back to defining what first principle is. So in my thought, and I'm going to read this again, it's a problem-solving and thinking approach, right? So gravity is not a first principle in my mind.
Okay, so in that approach, what do you do? Read the definition again.
Okay, so first principles is a problem-solving and thinking approach that involves breaking down complex ideas or problems into their most fundamental parts.
So is gravity a fundamental part or not?
Depends on what problem you're solving.
Of course. But let's say it's a physical problem here. It's building an airplane.
It's a part, but the thing in my mind that I'm not dialed in on is first principles is it's more of a structure. It's a way to think about
First principles
things.
is a way to break it down to those building blocks, those parts,
Hang on a
right?
second. Yeah, let me read this again. Breaking down complex ideas or problems into their most fundamental parts. Which would mean in this particular case, you're saying so they need to define what fundamental parts are. So you're saying that gravity is a force that's going to act on something.
That's what gravity is. But I'm saying gravity itself is a fundamental part of my being able to build an airplane.
If you're defining an airplane, I mean, you need to understand gravity, right? You're going to have a problem if you don't understand that
Yes.
fundamental force.
So now that becomes one of the building blocks that we use as our first principles thinking.
That's one of the fundamental parts if you're building an airplane. If you're building something else.
Yeah, well, they're all going to be different.
Okay,
First
they're always
principles
different.
are
That's an
never
important
are
point.
never the same unless you're the same problem,
Yes,
right?
that's a
So
point. Yeah.
so well, to me, I thought that was a given because you've got a particular area you're talking about, a problem you're talking about, and you're going down to the parts that make up that situation. So gravity is one of the things that we may have as a baseline part. So that is part of the first principles thinking. If you and I don't agree on gravity, we can't agree on a solution. We can't work together towards a solution. So to me, it is a part that you go down to that is understood to be consistent across everyone. When you're talking about multiple people, when you're talking about yourself, you just need to hold consistency in yourself.
Yeah.
You can't have gravity sometimes and not have gravity other times.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't say. Well, gravity only works, from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. I can't. Gravity is something there that's consistent. So I have to be consistent in that part, that first principle part that I'm working off of. And if
Yeah.
we're working as a team, that's probably the layer where we build our baseline understanding of the situation we're in. We're in a situation where there is gravity. We're in a situation where there's resistance because of the air. We're in a situation where we just kind of build out the situation, and these are all the parts that make up that situation. Those are the basic principles used in first principles thinking.
So then you could apply first principles to anything. So step number one is figuring out what the parts are that make that thing up, right?
Yeah. So you
Let's
probably
go to a
start with
simpler example. Yeah. But let's
you probably
simplify
start
the
with
example.
systems, and then from systems you go into whatever physical parts and computers and like, and you break it down. At some point, you get to a detailed enough level where you don't need to go further. Like if you're talking, I've got a computer that does this, and maybe it's enough to say I got a computer that is the brain of this thing we're building.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to go down into the microchips and the RAM and the hard drive size and that sort of thing, because at that point, just getting to the concept that there's a computer here that does XYZ might be sufficiently
Yeah.
at the part level for us.
You're solving a different problem. So I want to change examples if it's okay, just because it's a
Okay.
simpler example. And
Sure.
so just to conceptually understand this. So let's talk about making a cake. So
Sure.
if we're going to make a cake, we know we've got to have certain ingredients, right? Some flour and butter and sugar and salt. And I don't know what the ingredients are, but I'm sure we could go online and figure out that these are the core ingredients to make a cake.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably be pretty easy to get agreement. So step number one, if you're applying first principles thinking, is to break down to the fundamental parts. Break down to the parts that are granular enough that you don't need to break down anymore, right?
Yeah, but there's other principles in there that you're missing.
Okay, tell me.
Baking. What's happening in baking? What's happening chemically when you put the baking powder in there? So that one of the principles is by mixing these ingredients together and putting baking powder in there, or it's already in the mix or whatever, and I heat that up to a certain level, that heat is going to cause a reaction that ends up being the cake. So you've got to talk about the chemical reaction or the physics, the science, or whatever that's also acting upon this.
Okay. And this time you're moving ahead of me. I haven't got there yet. I'm just thinking I just want to...
Okay, but to me, that's
But
a
it's
part.
important.
That's what I'm saying. It's a different kind of part, but it's a part.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we will get there. But first of all, I
Okay.
think you need to understand the parts of this thing, the ingredients, right? We have to understand. And then, because what I'm trying to do, Chris, is I think in my mind that I take this thing in smaller chunks, the less likely I am to make assumptions, to make mistakes that I have to recycle back and be, oh my God, I forgot this thing, right?
Hmm.
Because right now the temperature and the time and the order and the mixing is not important to me right now. It will be in a minute, but right now I just need to know the fundamental ingredients. Step
Oh,
one. I'm trying to baby step this thing. I'm baby stepping it,
okay.
right?
So, but before I comment, what's step 2 then?
Okay, hang on. So we've decided that our output, we want a cake. And then we've
Output is a
decided
cake.
that these are the ingredients that it's going to take to make the cake.
Eggs, flour, milk, water, sugar, whatever.
Sugar, whatever, right? Whatever you want to put in your cake, right? Lemon, chocolate, whatever your pleasure is. Okay, now I get the ingredients. Now I need to think in terms of not what are the fundamental parts, but I need to think in terms of process and how these parts are going to combine and interact together. That's where I would go on step 2.
Okay, I've got all kinds of caveats to this in my head, but go. You keep
Perfect. Yeah,
going with
no,
your
go. Tell me your
keep going with
caveats.
your
That's
example.
all.
Keep
That's
going with
all.
your example for now.
That was it. That's all my example is. It's like now I need to define how do I put these
Okay,
things together, right? That's my next step. How does everything interact together?
so to me, okay, so in this, when you're talking about first principles,
Yeah.
what are the pieces that you've gone down to come up with first principles then?
Well, I just explained it. In the cake, we got, sugar, flour, whatever, right? Yeast,
But
whatever.
that isn't enough to do first principles thinking off of.
Well, but I'm saying step one of first principles is like thinking that involves breaking down complex idea or problem into their most fundamental parts, right?
Yeah. So to me, understanding what happens in the process of baking something, right? The chemical reaction by adding the baking powder and all that stuff in there. That is a principle too. That
Oh,
is
oh,
that's one of the elements of it, right? So it's not just the physical things. In fact, quite often what we're working off of may not be physical parts, but maybe ideological parts or other things that are out there that don't have a physical, tangible thing to them.
oh, and I agree 100%. I just
Okay.
haven't quite got there yet because I'm just trying to break it down into baby steps. Step one,
So,
step two.
so what I'm getting at is, I don't think there's anything different than saying scientifically this is how baking works, and this is a cup of flour.
So you would group all those together then?
They're all the basic elements to be able to build what you need to build.
Okay, yeah. See, I'm in my mind, I want to break those up into separate parts because
I don't need them as separate parts. Why? Why would I need them as separate parts?
because I think
They're
it's
all
going to
equal.
eliminate. It's going to eliminate. It's going to be easier to think through that because I only want to process a certain number of variables at a time because I only have limited mindset. So I'm like, okay, I define the ingredients. Now my next step is how are we going to integrate those ingredients together? In my mind, those are two logical different steps to simplify. In my mind.
If you don't know how baking works, how do you know what ingredients you need? How do you know you need baking powder if you don't know how baking works? If you don't know scientifically what that if I mix this ingredient with this ingredient, throw some water in there, whatever, throw it in the oven and heat it up to 400 degrees or 350 degrees, it's gonna rise and cause that kind of airiness. If you don't understand that, then what ingredients are you getting together? To me, it's equally as important as any other ingredient. It is an ingredient, is the knowledge to understand the how it happens.
Well,
It's
I'm
just
not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying just break them up into separate steps. That's all. I know it's all part of it. I get the idea that if you don't have step two,
if you're going top down, I
yeah,
can
I'm
see
going
it. If
top
you're
down.
going bottom up, I don't see how you ever get to that point because you won't. How do you? I'm sitting there. Okay, I got a bunch of ingredients together. I don't know anything about how baking works. So I'm just going to throw together wood chips and iron filings, and I mean, what is it that makes you understand? Are you going top down or bottom up?
In this particular case, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's like
So, because I
probably
think I
top
think
down.
if you're going to have a hierarchy that says understanding how these ingredients interact is at a level above just the base parts, the base ingredients, then I think top down I get it. Here's the cake. All right, cake's going to have some processes and some tools I'm going to need, like a pan and a mixer and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And then I go down further and further and further and further, and I go, okay, so I'm going to need to bake it, so I'm going to need an oven. Okay, what is I'm going to need to bake? Well, I'm going to need some ingredients. I need to make sure they react, so I'm going to have to make sure there's baking powder there. I mean, I can see going top down and figuring out what you need, but working from a white sheet of paper to figure out how to make a cake seems nigh on impossible to me without a hell of a lot more knowledge.
Well, and I'll get there. I'm just doing step one. I think if you're doing what I'm doing most of the time, or what I do is like I'm like, oh yeah, but we got to know this other stuff too. But I'm like, right now I don't care about anything else. I'm going to go back with you, and because I think this is a valid way of thinking for like I don't care about the process right now. I just need the raw ingredients. I need to know what my inputs are.
And my argument is that knowledge is a raw ingredient. It's not just about tangible physical objects like flour and sugar. It is actually about understanding how things work.
Okay, see, you can lump them together in your mind if you want. I'm breaking them out. I'm just telling you, I'm breaking out the raw ingredients from the manufacturing process. To me, it's a separate step in my mind.
It's not a manufacturing process.
Sure,
It's a law of science. It's a chemistry experiment.
Yeah, I know, but you've got to put things in the right order, right? I mean, otherwise, it's not going to come out with the cake you see in the picture. It's like it's like, for instance, you have the flour and you mix it in, you put the water and you put the egg in, and it's like the timing of things matters. It's not like you bake the cake and then crack the egg on top of it. I mean,
you're talking about procedure.
Yeah, process. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. Process.
Process and procedure are not the same thing.
Okay, define them differently then. Define each one.
So I would say the process of baking a cake.
Yes.
And I'm talking about scientifically here, when you put the baking powder in there and how it reacts in the situation when it gets heated up and the like, versus the procedure of first you get out a bowl, then you measure out 2 cups of flour. Then that's a procedure. That's a step by step. A procedure and a process are two different things. So the procedure might say, bake the cake at 350 degrees. If you live in Denver, which is 5,000 feet up in the air, you need to bake it at 380 degrees. I mean, that's procedure.
So you're defining process and procedure different. Hang on.
Very different. Procedure
is
is how you actually perform the task. Process is what happens. Yeah. Process, policy, procedures. The 3 P's of anything, and they're all very different.
Interesting. Okay, so here's
like a process flow is agnostic of the tool. It doesn't care if you're using a computer or an abacus, a pencil. It doesn't care. That's a process. The procedure says, go use the computer, go use the calculator.
Okay, let me see. Okay, I may be able to. So here's what it says, right? The terms process and procedure are closely related and often used interchangeably, which is what I do, right?
Mm-hmm,
but they do have distinct meanings, especially in business operations and quality management. So here's what chat says. It says process equals the what and the why. A high-level series of steps or stages that transform inputs into outputs. What is done and why it's done. And represents the procedure is the how. Yep. A specific detailed set of instructions for how to carry out a particular step within a process. How a task is performed. Exact methods, tools. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I would always lump those together. To me, they were the same thing. But.
Drastically different. And cool. if you approach them as different things, process can be agnostic of how you deliver it. Procedure is the clicks.
Hang on, let me just absorb this for a second. Hang on. So they're saying process they're defining that as the high-level series of steps. Our stages that transform inputs into outputs.
You could think of it as process steps and procedure tasks.
Yeah, right. The procedure is the how. Right, exactly. A specific detailed set of instructions.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things...
and then policy is overarching all of those things.
Yeah, like defining like what we will do. Just because we can do it doesn't mean that we are going to do it, right? So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. A process defines the big picture. A procedure gives the blueprint for the pieces. Yeah. This is really interesting. Okay, so you could have 5 different procedures for one process.
I've got my manual procedure as a backup. I've got my baseline procedure. I've got my Japanese speaking procedure. I've got my, whatever, you can have all these different scenarios and each one's slightly different, but the process behind it's the same.
Well, so this is interesting for me because this is what I'm thinking in my head right now, right? I'm thinking that if I want to start to apply first principles as a framework of thinking about solving a problem, which in this case, my particular problem I'm trying to solve in this case, and we'll use several examples, but is how to learn something faster, how to get to a deep understanding quicker by using first principles thinking. That's kind of my outcome of where I'm going. And I want a generalized process. And the example I think we started with was the fact that, yeah, I need to understand the nature of chat so that I can understand how to talk to it to get what I want. Like earlier today, you were talking about using chat and you were frustrated because it was giving you too much information. You're like, I don't want all that. I just want
It's
a little
noise.
bit.
It's noise. The first two sentences you get back in a chat response from chat, those are the only ones worthwhile.
Okay, in your opinion.
But no, I mean I'm joking. But
Yeah.
generally, when I'm having a conversation, that's often how it is.
That's
But
all
Scott,
you want.
you made the comment you want to use first principles to learn faster, right?
Yeah, to get to a deeper understanding.
I'm not sure first principles is ideal for learning faster. I think what it's really good at is stripping out the noise. What
Well,
happens is when we look at a situation, you look at any complex situation, political war, whatever you want, there are so many moving pieces to it that anything can changing a little bit here changes something over here, changes they're all interrelated in a complexity that's really tough for you to grasp an understanding of it. So what you do is by going to first principles, you try to build up and you stay on the things that are critical for whatever baseline thing you're thinking about. And then at that point, maybe at some point you have to add in these other dimensions of thought, but you've developed a core understanding of how this inner system works before you start adding extra dimensions onto it. Because you started from the base and you started working your way up to build this up, right? So in the cake scenario, we're not talking about choosing different frostings yet. We're not talking about, actually in many ways, maybe you're right. Is it a no-bake cheesecake or is it a baked cake? That would then have a different thing. But the idea is you don't add in all the complexities of a situation. You take a complex situation and then you simplify it and you work your way up and you try to stay in the simple path the entire way until you get near the same level of thought as the other one, but now you've got a good understanding of how the pieces fit together. So now when someone throws a piece at you, an extra piece that you weren't thinking about, you already have a framework that you can bolt that piece into it and figure it out.
Yeah, or reject it. Say that's not important right now. We don't care. Right?
Wait, let's say you can't reject it. Let's say it's a constraint that someone throws at you and you've got to take it.
Oh, in that case, then I've got to integrate.
You've got such a clear understanding of what you've built from first principles now that you can just add stuff in and go, boom, okay, that changes. Okay, that changes. Okay, that changes. You quickly can change because you understand how those pieces fit together from the bottom up.
Yeah, I think for me, the concept of my personal problem that I'm trying to solve is I'm starting this new business, and there's a million things I could do. And my question is, I want to say no to as many of those things as possible and focus on just the things that, quote, will move the needle, right? And for me, it means getting to revenue as quickly as possible. That's what it means. And then profitable straight after that. That in fact, getting to profit, but you got to have revenue to get to profit. So that's where I'm trying to go. So I watched this. Do you know who Alex Hormozi is? Have you watched any of his videos? Yeah. So I was watching a video last night, and he's like, basically, small business owners are so busy running around chasing a bunch of nonsense that they don't really make significant progress. Or if they would just pick one thing and just go all in on that one thing, they would get there way faster and make way more money. He goes, as a general rule, that's probably the biggest. If you just ask me for one thing to make money faster, that would be the one thing that I'd recommend you do, is be very clear on what you're saying no to. And so I'm trying to apply his general philosophy, and I'm trying to use first principles to get there. And you're right, first principles may not be the best tool for that. It may not be.
Well, if you take a situation of having a successful business that you're running,
Yeah.
and you were to take first principles to break that down, what is that? Like, what does that mean for marketing? What does that mean for product? What does that mean for all the different pieces of what make a business, right?
Yeah.
Your sales funnel, or your pricing, or your, I don't know, your invoice process, whatever the heck, all the different pieces that make a business,
Yeah.
right? You can't. So the problem with what he's saying that I have is that you can't ignore everything else. You can't truly say no to everything else, or it falls apart for some other reason. But that said, then you can take some of the other approach you talked about with hire someone to do that. You know,
Well, I think first of
you
all, you got
you,
to
you don't have to concentrate on vendor management. You don't have to concentrate on procurement. You don't have to concentrate on whatever. You can find someone to do that, but it still has to happen.
well, I guess step one is decide what are the elements of the cake, right? I mean, you got to figure out
Yeah,
what
so
are
I'm
the
saying,
things.
so you need to go down and figure out first principles. What does your successful business look like in each of those areas? What are those pieces, and what do they look like?
And what's the minimum number of inputs I need to get to my output? That's it.
Minimum number of inputs you need to
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
your.
Like if you're baking a cake, well, I don't even think of an
Oh,
example.
got it.
Yeah.
I was thinking the minimum level of effort to deliver that thing,
No,
whatever
no,
that
the
is.
effort's a different thing. That's part of the, hang on, that's part of the process or whatever the heck it is, right? That's part of the, yeah, that could be. I still need to understand this process and
So
procedure.
you need some level of marketing, right? So then you need to decide what's the minimum level of marketing you need to get to what you need. But then you have to also figure out how are you going to get that delivered, right?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
you
and
doing
at
it, or is it someone else doing it?
yeah. So at the core, figure these are two dudes, right? These are two dudes, right? This dude's you, this dude's me, right? You got a problem, a concern, pain, something. I'm like, hey Chris, I got this thingy that'll fix it for you, and I need $100, and I'll give you this thing. I mean, that's the core of a business, right? If you break it down,
Hmm.
that's the core thing. Then you have to ask, well, how are we going to meet? How are we going to connect? How am I going to build this thing? Those are other things. But if I just focus on the thing, I need to understand your problem and deliver a solution, and I'm going to get some money for it. I mean, that's the core essence of a business, that transaction. And so
Yeah,
that's
but
like,
I think so. This is the thing when he says business owners are running around doing so many things.
yeah, right.
If you concentrate on one thing and do one thing, everything else falls apart. So then you find yourself running around with your head cut off trying to fill the gap for all these things that you haven't done. And then you can't concentrate on the thing that you're trying to get to grow. So it's almost a catch-22. It's like if you focus on one thing, everything else gets ignored, but those are the things you need on the back end to support your business. But if you concentrate on those things, then your main focus gets ignored, and then you're not growing the business. So to me, he's just stating the obvious. What needs to happen is people need to understand how they can figure out what's the minimum things they need,
Yeah,
and
right.
how can they get delivered to them so that they can stay focused on the main thing.
Yeah, right, right.
That's a slightly different message than you just have to find the one thing. No, you can't ignore everything else. Otherwise, you ignore your taxes, the government's going to have something to say about that. You have to have some level of effort and time spent in taxes. Doesn't mean you have to spend the effort and time, but somebody does.
Well, and that's a different thing. That's how you're allocating resources to solve their problems. But there's many things in business, and I've done this extensively, and I've seen other people do it. They work on things that don't matter. They think they're important, but they don't matter to make that transaction happen. And so you've got to put only the essential items to make that transaction happen as a starting point. That's what I'm saying.
So you need to figure out what the parts of your business are that you need.
Yes, yes.
And then you need to figure out everything you're doing, and then cut out the stuff that doesn't fit into one of those parts.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
now then once you get components, like if we're making it, let's use a cake example. Okay, I've got a cake, I got to get the ingredients, I got to get an oven, I got to get a mixer, I got to get a bowl. I mean, these are things that I can't deliver that cake without those things. So those are non-negotiables. Now, it might be things that maybe are nice to have that when you're starting out, maybe what I really want is a really beautiful commercial kitchen. And I'm like, well, you don't need that to start. I mean, that's not a critical component to start out. And so if you go off focusing on the fact that I'm going to go build out the most beautiful commercial kitchen anybody's ever seen, I'm like, that's not the most optimal approach, right? That's all I'm saying is like, you got to figure out what to focus on because you have very limited resources to get this thing up and running quickly.
Okay.
That's all. That's all I'm saying, actually, right? It like if you're just trying to make one cake, you don't need a beautiful $500 mixer. It's like just get a damn spoon and mix it up by hand, right? That's all you need. So as opposed to what I will typically do, and I know you do this too, is I'll go out and spend 2 days on doing research and finding out what's the best optimal like mixer required, right? And I'm like, well, that's not the best use of time right now. Maybe later as you scale, that may be a critical question, but right now it's not. And I think I see that pattern happen in me and a lot of other people. So that's why I'm trying to go back, Chris, to critical thinking. I'm sorry, not critical thinking. Well, of course, always critical thinking, but going back to first principles to find out what are the key components. That's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to learn. That's why, and I'm not trying to argue for it. I'm just trying to say, is that the optimal path forward for what I want?
Well, I think first principles is a fancy way of just kind of talking about problem solving, personally.
Well, that's the definition. First principles is a problem solving and thinking approach. So yeah,
it's
right.
But so what other problem solving methodologies are there? Can you ask it?
Well,
besides first principles, what other problem solving methodologies are there? I guess trial and error.
Yeah,
is that a problem solving methodology?
What brought her other? Hang on a second. Oh, interesting. It says, great question. Besides first principles thinking, there are many powerful mental models, frameworks, and problem-solving techniques used in business, decisions, and strategic thinking. Here's a breakdown of some of the most useful ones. Mental models and thinking framework is second-order thinking.
Sure.
Interesting. So think beyond the immediate consequence. Ask, and then what? Fine. That's
okay. That's problem solving in the other direction. That's not how to do something. That's what happens if I do something. Got it.
These are other mental models. Is what it is. These are other mental models. 2 is inversion. Flip the problem. Instead of asking how to succeed, ask how to fail, and then avoid that. I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
That's kind of cool. Occam's razor basically says the simplest explanation or
simplest answer,
is often the best. Not always, but often best, and you can avoid unnecessary complexity. Here's OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. A decision-making cycle developed for fighter pilots. Helps in fast-moving competitive environments. SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, set. Pareto principle: 80-20, right? Something else.
How's that how's that a problem-solving principle? Oh, solving for the 80% and leaving the 20%? You don't have to get 100% solution?
Yeah, it says 80% of the results come from 20% of inputs. Identify the vital few efforts that yield the greatest results.
And concentrate on the 20% that give you the 80% results. Okay,
right.
I don't consider that a problem-solving methodology. I consider that a goal or a constraint.
A goal, but I think it's good though. I mean, and at this point,
that doesn't change how you solve a problem. That just changes your outcome. That just changes your goal. Instead of a goal of 100%, I'm going or whatever. I'm going to go for a goal of an 8. To me, that's not the problem-solving methodology. That's a goal-setting methodology.
Yeah, okay, but it just gives some alternative ways of thinking about things, and different things may
work.
But
as far as problem-solving by going down to understanding how a problem works, are any of them like first principle?
Here's number 8: systems thinking. Focus on
that's kind of there. Okay, I kind of see that as first principles, very much so. But okay.
Lean thinking, the 5 whys.
Lean thinking. What's lean thinking?
Lean thinking focus on eliminating waste and continuous improvement. Kaizen is another word for it they have.
What?
Well,
as problem solving?
That says practical business tools and methods, right?
That's process improvement. That's not problem solving.
Well, okay, you gotta hang on a second.
Lean methodology is a way to build, once you've built a process, how to make it more efficient.
Okay,
not the same thing. Problem solving is something, problem solving okay, and maybe we should define problem solving. To me, it's when there's something that no one knows how to do and you figure out how to do it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's problem solving, as opposed to I just need to make it better. I just need to make it more efficient. That's
Yeah.
not the
Okay.
same kind of problem.
Okay. Hang on. Okay. You're getting your panties in a bunch here. That was under a different section called practical business tools and methods. And I didn't indicate that break to you. So thanks
Okay.
for like bringing that to my attention. So anyways, there you go. So that's it. So there's different models to think through things.
So
And
second order, and was it reversion or inversion?
inversion was one other idea. Yeah.
Okay, so inversion I get. Second order is not, it's not problem solving, it's understanding the impact of a solution.
Yeah, it's thinking beyond the immediate consequence.
Yeah,
Task
which
and
which
then-
which,
right.
which again is a weakness that most people have, because they think of first order results, they don't think of second and third order results, because it gets
Yeah.
hard at that point.
Yeah.
Systems thinking to me is in fact just first principles thinking.
Yeah, different kind of a different way of saying. But
So,
what I'm
so
saying
to
is-
me, building something from the ground up to find a solution is first principles thinking. I don't know if there's any others.
yeah, and a lot of these are very similar, but it's just different ways of it. To me, okay. So let me tell you a story, right? So I studied photography for a long time, and the idea was to capture a really good picture. And then you had to have clear intent, like who's this picture for? What are you trying to say? What's the messaging of this thing? And sometimes you'd struggle. You're like, it's not there, and I don't know how to get there. I'm kind of confused. I don't know what my next step is. I don't know what to change to get there. And then so he would teach us different techniques to use to try to get a different viewpoint of things. And so one of the techniques is physically pick up your camera and move 180 degrees and look at it from a different direction. And he goes, sometimes that could unlock something. Sometimes you might see something, you're like, oh, okay, now I got it. Now I need to go on to this other direction. It help unlock your brain, right? By thinking about things in a different way.
That's
And
like
so-
inversion.
Yeah, that would be an example of like inversion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I like these things because what it lets me do, it lets me think through things, questions I can ask myself, like Pareto principle. I can say, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I'm trying to get 100% perfect solution is not the right thing. But what would I need to do if I just wanted to get 80% right now? I mean,
Okay,
just
again, you're changing your outcomes. You're changing the goal.
I'm changing the goal.
You're redefining the problem.
I'm redefining the problem in a different way to hopefully I'll see it in a different way.
To me, that's not a that's not a problem solving methodology. That is saying, okay, the problem, I don't like this problem. Let's change the problem. So
I guess, I mean, for me, it's like maybe I should be more precise in this, but for me, sometimes I feel stuck in my thinking and I just need some other ideas. And a lot of times it's like, oh my gosh, okay, that idea doesn't work, but it's like that caused me to think about this other thing that's related to this in a different way, you know?
okay, but all these are problem solving. You want to get to learning. I don't
Well,
think any of those. I don't think all the ones we've been talked about are that helpful to learning, and they're not detrimental. But first principles is about learning the environment, the world around which you're in, and building up to a solution or an understanding from there.
Okay, so then give me a better, so if I want to learn some, I'm going to define a problem for you, right? So this is my current problem I'm working on. I'm learning how to talk to ChatGPT so that it'll give me the answers that I want. And so in my mind, my first thought was, in order to do that, was I've got to understand the nature of this thing. I've got to understand how this thing thinks so that I can start looking at problems from its perspectives, how it wants to solve problems, so I can prompt it or guide it based upon what's going to make sense for it. So
Can I
that
ask
was
you a
my-
question before you get to that point?
Yeah.
So you said you want to do you want to be able to prompt chat to give you what you want?
Yeah, to solve
What
my
do
problem.
you want?
Well, in this case, it doesn't really matter. I want an answer to whatever problem I currently have, right?
And so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. What if it does matter? What if it does matter? What you want will impact will vary how you have to interact with it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, okay, hang on. Let's talk about that. That's a possibility. I guess
right?
at least to start out with, I want a generalized approach, and then I can break it out depending on problem.
Right, because
So are you?
what I'm thinking here is like the problem that I ran up with, where I was giving the chat instructions and it wouldn't follow the instructions
Yeah,
if
right.
in a custom GPT, but it would follow them in a standoff one-off
Yeah,
interaction,
yeah,
and so
right.
obviously it was not operating the same way between the two,
I
because in
think, yeah.
one sense the prompt gave it instructions on how to act, the other sense the prompt did not give it instructions on how to act, and so there's a difference there, which would in fact change my approach. I would have to have two different approaches in those two different situations. So what I'm getting at with you is,
Yeah,
if you know
yeah.
what is it, do you know what you want? So you want right now to to you don't know exactly what you want in the output, but you want to be able to influence the output.
Let me extract this up at a higher level. Like, this is what I truly want. I want a generalized, optimized approach that I can learn and solve any problem as quickly as possible. Whether that's capable or not, I mean, ideally, that's what I want, right? And so, and one then sub problem of that is how can I talk to ChatGPT to make that happen faster?
Go back to your higher level thing. So
Okay. My higher level thing is I want a system, a process. Give me some rope here, right? To
you
give
want
me,
a
give,
process agnostic of tools to be able to learn and solve problems quickly.
yeah, that's close enough for now. I may define it more precisely
So
later, but yeah, that's a great
if the
start.
particular procedure to do this was to read a book, you'd read a
Yeah,
book.
right.
If the
Yeah.
procedure was to go out and run around the block, you'd run around the block. If the procedure was to go and learn Spanish, you'd go and learn Spanish.
If yeah, and if I believed that that would solve my problem, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely,
All right.
100%.
So top level, you want to build a process by which to do that. Okay. One of the tools, one of the procedures you think will get you there is using chat.
Yes, I believe that. Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So we're making a leap from you want a process to problem solve to I want an actual procedure to use to start delivering on that. So
So
you're
that
not actually building a high level process, because the high level process would be I need to find a way to gather information, to do research, to be able to synthesize that information. I need a way to be able to do that. I mean, you'd be building all the high level process steps basically for problem solving in whatever scenario, and then you would say, okay, now I'm going to apply the tools I've got here. I'm going to use chat as and see what the procedures are to use chat to make this happen.
I think is a starting point, and chat may not be the only tool that I use, but let's assume right now it's a pretty darn good start, right?
Okay, so what I'm getting at here is chat is the procedure, problem solving or learning quickly is the process.
I don't know that chat's the procedure. I think chat's the tool. Then I need a
Yeah,
procedure to ask it properly, right? How to talk to it.
procedure is specific to the tool,
Okay, okay, yeah, okay.
right? You could have a general procedure for all LLMs, but realistically, if you really want to maximize the output, you would have a specific procedure for each LLM.
Yeah, because each one will respond differently to a prompt you put
Right.
into.
So you could
Right.
say, I've got a procedure to interact with LLMs, which doesn't care which LLM you use, or I have
Yeah.
a procedure to maximize chat, to maximize Claude, to maximize Grok.
Yeah, right, right.
Right. So you want to start off right now, then I'm guessing with a generic procedure for all LLMs, and then you can refine it.
As a starting point, that's a great start. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so your assumptions going into this are by adjusting the prompt, you will get results that will get you to learn something faster.
Yeah, my ongoing assumption is this, is that it knows the answer. All I got to figure out is how to ask the right questions it'll tell me.
Okay. So barring the fact that we don't know if it knows the right answer, we're assuming it knows the right answer.
We're assuming it does. Yeah.
Okay. And then you've got to find out how to get to. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So then what does it take for you to ask the right questions is what you're asking then, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously you have to interact with chat.
Yeah, you got to talk to it, right?
right? You could use an API. You could use speech. You could type.
Yep.
Does it matter?
It may matter. I mean, when I say talk to it, I mean all of those together. I haven't broken it down. I just need to communicate it with some way.
Okay, because I know API. You were saying earlier the API has different guardrails than
It has a little
the
different
other
guardrails, and I
interaction.
have not explored that path. Um, and that may
So
be necessary in certain cases, but I think as a general approach, I want something a little more generic, you know?
yeah, okay. So assuming you're using the typical LLM interface and you're going to
Yeah.
prompt by text or voice,
Yes.
what is the problem with the prompts you get?
Well, the problem is I don't get a direct answer for what I want in a way I can understand it. Because a lot of times it
Is
just
the
goes off on some random nonsense, you
is
know?
the topic sensitive in any ways?
What define sensitive? What do you mean?
Abortion, vaccines,
No,
gender,
no, no,
guns.
no.
Okay, because if one of the things I've noticed is you when you touch on any of those topics, chat gets very politically correct in the way it responds.
It gives
You can get
guardrails up.
around
Yeah.
some of that, but it takes a lot of work to get around some of
Yeah,
that. So
right.
you're not touching on subjects that that is purposely filtering for.
No, no.
Okay.
Well, hang on. I don't think so, because
Okay.
my questions now are focused mostly around solving business problems, and usually chat doesn't seem to have any guardrails around solving business problems. You know, particularly like
You never know.
how to.
You never know when an ethical thing might pop in there, though. Who
Well,
knows?
I know, right? So that's why I said I'm not 100% sure, but
And
probably.
one thing you could do is test the prompt on multiple LLMs to see if it reacts differently. Because
Yeah.
one thing I do noticed is it won't sometimes it won't answer a question. I say, is this a company policy? Is this a legal policy? Is this some other? And it will say it doesn't know.
It
It's just
doesn't know.
within their policies they are blocking talking about the
Yes.
elections
Yes. Yeah.
for whatever, and it won't give me. It'll give me a bunch of generic reasons why. It won't give
Yeah.
me a specific reason why.
Gotcha.
Right. So anyway, so back to your thing. So are you getting too much information? Not focused information? Are you getting totally irrelevant information?
Yes. All of them at different times. Yes.
So maybe you have to answer each of those separately, right? You need to ask for specifically what you want. You need to exclude a certain amount of. You need language to exclude stuff you don't want,
Mm-hmm.
and you need some way to keep it focused on a topic. So I don't know if that's the temperature we talked about, where you allow it to follow exactly the most probable solution,
Yeah.
or if
Yeah.
you give it some variance, right? Because I think sometimes what you're looking for is the stuff that actually might be the variance.
It
So
could.
maybe you have a different prompt between I want to know what the internet thinks is the best answer, which is the highest probability,
Yeah.
versus I want some creativity here. Give me some of the wild ass answers that are out there,
Yeah, and I
right?
want both at both times. Yeah, exactly. So let me define.
In one prompt, or are you okay with two prompts for that?
Oh,
One for
I'm
one for.
fine with 50 prompts. I'm fine
Okay,
with it, right?
got it. So that's a
Yeah.
different pathway, though. You're talking about one pathway is give me some creativity. One pathway is give me what the knowledge of the masses.
Yeah, now let me tell you what happens in my mind particularly. My question usually isn't perfectly defined, so I use the interaction with chat to think myself. And it might be, oh my God, okay, it said that one thing, which is not what I'm talking about, but that spurred me now to think this other thing. So let me go back and re-ask the same question with that new insight that I've gotten. So it helps connect the dots. It makes me become more creative in my questions because I never thought about that approach. That's really good. So yeah, that's a powerful tool. So in one way, chat helps me to think.
Yeah, to me that's ultimately that's the skill you need is using chat as a collaborator to refine your thinking.
Hey, I got an idea, Chris. Maybe we ought to create a podcast called How to Think Better.
Yeah, we could do that.
We could do that. Exactly.
Um,
That's what I'm trying to get to, man. I'm trying to learn how to think better. Exactly.
Yeah, so I told you at one point I went down this little rabbit hole trying to figure out gun ownership by political affiliation in the U.S.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Right,
remember. We had a whole podcast on that.
yeah,
What,
and
last
so
time? Yeah.
so my initial prompt was really simple. It said, "Please estimate the percentage of gun owners in the U.S. by political affiliation."
Okay, there you go. Simple. You just want the data. No opinion. Just give me the data. Right.
Yeah, and it misinterpreted gun as gone. So it
Okay.
said, "What are gone?" I said, "Guns," as in firearms, and it said, "Okay."
Guns.
And it gave me a breakdown: 45% of gun owners are Republicans, 20% are Democrats. Okay, boom, 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 boom,
Okay.
and it gave me its take too. My take: the stark political divide reflects broader cultural identities. Blah 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 blah. Right?
Yeah, fine.
Um,
That's all good. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So I said, what about the other 35%? You only accounted for 65% of the
Yeah, right,
population.
right,
And
right.
then it said, well, those other 35s are independents and other ones who are consider themselves moderates, not one way or the other. Okay, that's a pretty good breakdown.
Okay, fair enough.
And then it tells me, what does it mean? I'm like, I don't care what it means, because I'm going to put together my own idea of what it means. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
even
not
know what
asking
you
that
think it
right now.
means,
Just give me the
right?
data, right? Yeah.
But then I said, so then my follow up was one thought that occurred to me was after the attempt on Trump's life last year, why, I was asking, um, why were there no attempts when he was in his first term? I would have assumed there would have been. And I was wondering, I was laying out the idea, is it because gun ownership amongst liberals is so much lower and those would be the ones who are trying to kill him?
Oh, so
And
that's the hypothesis, right? So you're asking
yes.
questions to see how
So, so I
valid
said,
it
so I
is. Yeah.
said, and I wondered if it had to do with the fact that those who opposed him would have been would more likely be liberal, and the liberals own fewer guns. So just by sheer numbers of weapons on that side, just the sheer numbers, there'd be a lower chance of an attempt of violence happening.
Yeah.
And I said, has there been any discussion about that? And it says, interesting idea. Nope, there's been no direct conversation as to which party owns how many guns, and therefore what the likelihood of someone who commits violence, a political violence with a gun, is likely to be one side or
Yeah.
the other.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it really is, to me. This is the way I iterate in the thinking with it. Right. I can't get to a single prompt. Are you trying to create a prompt flow that you apply consistently every time? Is that what you're looking for?
No. Yes. Maybe.
Because you're trying to build a system that does something. So I'm guessing you want repeatability on the outcome.
Uh
Yeah,
I'm
repeatability on
trying to
the
I'm
efficacy
trying
of the
to
outcome.
understand my okay, here's what I'm trying to do, I think. And work with me to define this better. I'm trying to understand how it thinks so that I can get the information I want, but I'm going to have to speak to it differently. Like if I want an answer from you, I'm going to use different language than if I want the answer from, let's say, my wife Shelley, because she thinks radically differently. Right? So I'm going to start framing the question differently. And so I need to understand what it thinks, feels, believes, how it works so that I can tailor my questions more precisely for it. That's what I'm
So
trying to do.
when I ask a question of chat or any LLM, and I say, "What is America's favorite food?"
Yeah, right.
and it tokenizes that question,
Yeah.
and it goes out, and what is it doing, Scott, at that point?
Well, I have a limited understanding of this. So what it's doing is it's taking those words, breaking them up into tokens, probably running a search against some kind of vectorized database, looking where those things are, and it's looking for other words that are closely related to that, maybe other questions where people ask that, and then it's not thinking, it's saying, oh, other people have asked these questions. These are the answers that they said, right? When I see somebody say this or do this, this is kind of the answer. So it's giving you it's a prediction engine. It's predicting what other people would answer that question as.
Is
That's
it
what I
predicting or is it applying probability?
It's predicting and applying probability. It depends on, apparently you can tune it based on temperature, like you said. So it's not a deterministic answer. And I know
So
that because I asked chat the same question multiple times and I get different answers.
there's a woman who does YouTube videos, and she's been in AI for years, and she explains things pretty well. But my understanding is you've got those tokens you talked about that
Yeah,
make up
right.
the question. What is America's favorite food? and it goes and it finds, it takes a token and looks at what the next likely token is and looks at, and then it goes out and I
Yeah.
don't know where it's pulling information from, like you said, a vectorized database, because it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna go out on the internet every time and look up this information every time.
No,
It's
it
got
gets
data
that from its
somewhere.
data that it's trained on, right?
So it's got a set of data that it's got. Now what it happens is when it looks at the word pizza, it's got like a heat map of words that are pizza, and then words that are kind of related, and then less related and less related and less related around it,
I think
right?
that's
And then
fair. Maybe
it
that's that.
looks
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's a
and it,
perfect, but that's fair enough for this
yeah,
discussion.
and
Yeah.
it looks for the most likely responses. Well, when other people ask what your favorite food is in America, 80% of them said pizza, or 60% of them,
Yeah,
whatever
right,
the number
right,
is,
right,
right?
right.
So more than likely, that's the highest probability correct answer I'm going to give.
Yes, right.
Right? But temperature may allow me to change that a little bit. Maybe I
Yes,
say
right.
pepperoni pizza. Maybe I say
Yep,
cheese pizza. Maybe I
yep,
say French bread pizza. Maybe I say Sicilian pizza. I don't know, right?
yeah,
And
right.
then if you crank the temperature all the way, is it all the way up? I think it is. It might go random and say sushi pizza or something, or something totally off the wall.
Yeah, right.
But the idea is it's really, there's a level of pattern recognition that's then mapped to a level of probability, I guess
Yeah,
we would
yeah,
say.
right, right,
And
right.
then it's trained to use it, so it's limited to the information that's available in its training, in its
Yeah,
databases,
right, right.
which is from the internet but isn't really the internet, right? I don't think it is. And then
Well,
what happens
yeah,
is it's also trained to interact in a certain way. So you can control the temperature, how variable it is to sticking to the probability.
yeah,
Um, but you can also tell it to do other things. You can actually, and some of it you can do in your prompt. Some of it does just because of
yeah,
the system and how it's
right, right, right.
trained. So if that's the way it works, then your goal is to, one, you hope that it's got access to all the data you want, and you're assuming it does.
Hmm.
Two, you need a question that's close enough to what your answer is that it's looking in the right bucket.
Yes, right. Mhm.
Three, you need a way to control what information it's pulling out of that bucket.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, and
fair
so
enough.
you don't want generic information, you want specialized information. You don't want the information for a first year programmer, you want the information for a 15th year programmer, or whatever. There's a context level of understanding that, it's that the answer is the answer, the nuance to the answer is critical.
Yeah, yeah, because I think the better answers I have, then the better I'll be able to solve
The
problems,
other
right?
thing to consider is how do they judge the size of an LLM's, like 7 billion this or 50 billion that, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
I
yeah,
forgot what they
yeah.
call that.
They're
But that's
called
that's
knobs, and it's a
the
transformer, and there's all this
the
technology that I don't understand.
the length of the response it's able to give is based upon a lot of that processing power, because it just keeps adding tokens. It says boom boom boom. Here's the answer.
Yeah,
The the fa the favor the favorite the
yeah,
favorite food of the, and
yeah.
it kind of builds it out, of Americans is pizza. It eventually builds that out, but it's not just one go. It's iterating token by token to do that,
Yes,
right? And the
that's
more
what
powerful it is, the longer the answers. That's why we were limited in the length. Like, you try to write a book in one shot with an AI, and it's tough to do
yeah,
because it's got a, I don't know, 3,000 character limit or something like
yeah,
that, right? So when you think about it from that aspect, then you need to, I think you've got a couple limitations to consider. The output it's going to give you is going to be based on the power of the actual model that you're on,
the model, right?
the data it has access to,
Yes,
and how clearly you cut out the extraneous stuff it's going to
yes.
look at.
Hmm.
You need to be able. That's why when you tell it you are a marketing manager with 20 years experience who
Yeah,
has a specialization in TikTok,
yeah,
it now knows to ignore certain things.
yeah, yeah. It's zeroing in. It's like, oh, okay, I know the answer is going to be over there somewhere, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I don't care about yoga, right, anymore.
yeah.
Correct.
And so I think that, so maybe the framework you need to build is, one, what are the constraints I need to give you from, at the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah,
right? You are blank. This is your field of focus,
yes, right.
right? So that's your first prompt,
Yeah,
right? Your second prompt, what am I trying to do? I want to build a plan to do this. I want to understand how this works. Whatever, that's your second step, your goal. Um, the third step would be what? Specialization, specifics to that.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's all sorts of, you can go online and get all sorts of like prompt structures and models to pull from, and everybody thinks they have their best prompt model, but there's a bunch of them out there you can use. But yeah, follow a well respected prompting module, not module, but process will get you closer to the right answer. But it's still not
So,
perfect though.
so you've created several master prompts. I think
Yes.
creating a master prompt for this scenario. So I'm trying to create a master prompt for research
Okay.
so that it doesn't act in a way that I find annoying by giving me
Yeah.
long answers I don't need.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to get it to focus. So if you tell it, this is the way we interact. This is how I want you to answer questions. And then you also tell it what it is, what its role is, what its background is, whatever. You can tell it the role you're taking on. I'm an experienced person, but I
Yeah.
love curious. I have a vast curiosity. I love to learn new things, and I love to learn them at this level.
Yeah.
I love
Right.
to learn them at the level beyond the basics, not to the level of a subject matter expert, but think of someone who is very competent in that role,
Yeah. Right. Right.
right? And you kind of give it a context for all that stuff, and spell it out and see what comes out with that.
Well, I do that. I do that. Here's where I think I need to understand more is I need to understand more how I keep saying this, how it thinks. I think I just need to go into a deep dive understanding of how LLMs work, how transformers work, how reward-based training works. Because if I understand how it processes data, I'll be able to ask better questions. Like one of the things Tony Robbins says, and this applies to anything, this was way before artificial intelligence. He's like, if you want better answers, ask better questions. So I've taken that principle and saying, man, I need to learn how to ask better questions. So what do I need to do to ask better questions? Oh, I need to understand how it thinks, right? So I can ask better questions so I can get better answers. So this is my process that I'm going down. So maybe, Chris, maybe the answer to my question is I just need to take a deep dive for a day or two in understanding how LLMs work, how transformers work, what its limitations, what is it, what is it good at, what is it not good at? Because I have just the most cursory understanding of that right now.
I get where you're coming from. I kind of agree with what you're saying. I'm not sure you're going to get the benefits you're hoping to get out of it.
Okay, fair enough. Then
And
give me a better.
and the reason why I'm worried about the ability to do that is you're not going to get an unfettered access to the AI to the LLM. So whatever system instructions are in play are gonna play into this as well.
And
Now
so they
maybe if you
call
were to
it,
if you hosted your own AI, problem is you wouldn't be able to have a very powerful one. But if you
right,
hosted your own AI, you might be able to get it focused, laser focused in how you're thinking.
yeah,
I just have this feeling that it still defaults to this general nice to interact with persona that makes it tough. You're going to constantly you have to be vigilant and constantly focusing on where you want it to be.
yeah, right.
Right. And I don't know that the thinking is going to change the output in the way you want it to. I think you can refine it. You can get good with it with the prompts and the like, but I'm not sure the ROI on what you would get from understanding how it thinks is there
Yeah, is it worth
just
it?
getting good. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that.
right now you just
Yeah.
diligently prompt and make sure you're refocusing it all the time. You're going to get close to the result you want. I'm not sure understanding how it thinks is going to make that much difference.
That's interesting. Oh, hey, I gotta carefully consider it because that's my first intuitive nature. My first overriding principle is if you want to use something effectively, any tool, right? You got to understand how the tool works, what it can do, what it can't do, the constraints that it operates in, right? So, for instance, if I'm building something, this is my first example. Um, I need to understand what a screwdriver does, and I have a whole bunch of different kinds of screwdrivers, right? Because now I know that, and then I play with each screwdriver, and then I know that, oh, this screwdriver does a good job of that, and in this case, I really shouldn't use a screwdriver. I should use another kind of wrench because that's going to work better for this particular instance. So I sort of have this set of rules up that I can see a problem, and I kind of know based on past experience of using tools, oh, that tool is probably going to be the best tool to solve this particular problem.
Scott, my problem is more that there's a layer in between the way it works and what you see.
Well, so I need to
and
understand what that layer is, right? And I think you're referring to
and that is proprietary to the company, and that I don't know that you'll have access to. Right. That's why I'm saying if you have an unfettered AI, then you know you're getting raw data, right? Because it leaves it up to you to be the one to have the resilience to put up with the crap that comes out of the real AI. I
Yeah.
think what ends up happening is they build a filter on there for a variety of reasons, not just to protect the user, but to
Okay.
protect themselves, legal
Of course.
protection, to follow whatever political belief the person who's
Yes.
training them has, whatever it is, right? All
Yeah.
that sort of thing falls into play. And so if you want to go back to your screwdriver idea, it's like you think you're supposed to be using a screwdriver. You know how screwdrivers work, and you think you're supposed to be using a screwdriver, but that's not what you see. You see that you need to use a wrench, and that's not actually what's there. It's a screwdriver, but you're seeing a wrench, right? Because
Right.
the filter that's in between you and the actual thing is reinterpreting it somehow for you or changing it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So you could understand. What I'm getting is you can understand exactly how the AI works, and I'm not sure it's gonna work the way it's supposed to because of that filter layer.
Well, I get that. So I guess my question is, if I want to get better answers, I mean, but going down this route, and it may not be the most efficient one, it's just
Mhm.
the only one I can think of at the moment. And if somebody would give me a better approach, I would be happy to play with it.
Well,
But I can derive this, Chris, just by talking to it and asking questions. Like it'll give me the wrong answer all the time, and I go, "Why did you give me that answer?" And it'll usually justify. It'll be, "Oh, I did this, and I thought this, and I thought like." Oh, that's interesting. So that's giving me insight into how it thinks, you know? So I am increasing my understanding. Will it be enough to really get the best answers? That I don't know.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
the problem, of course, is what data is there. So one of the guys who was teaching a class I was in was he's a basketball fan, and I forgot which player it was. One of the players that transferred to the Lakers or something. Uh, Doncic, or I forgot the guy's name. It's a interesting spelling of a name, but um, he asked a question about that player getting transferred to that team,
Yeah.
and the AI said, chat said, yeah, I don't know about any of these fictional players you're talking about. I don't know
Okay.
any.
Yeah.
There's no news about these fictional players. He says
Yeah.
it's not a fictional player. Here's the news articles. He gave him the
Yeah.
URLs for the news articles, and he goes, "You're right. This player is whatever." So when did that trade happen? I can't give information about fictional characters.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, whatever the information it had did not have that information in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's actually that goes on your first assumption that it actually has the data you want.
Well, yeah, and can it access the data? So this is why I I went out and I bought the pro versions or the premium versions of a couple of the big ones, right? Because I'm like, okay, this is my thought, right? This is my thought is that well, maybe if I get the pro versions of things, that'll give me more thinking ability, so I would have less possibility of that happening. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But my general thought was is that if you pay more for something, there's typically some benefit in the increased price fee,
Oh,
right? That's
I
my
thought you bought the high level grok to get the waifu character.
oh, oh
The
no,
animated female girl that you can interact with.
I don't even know about that, but I got to check that out. Thanks for letting me know. Actually, I'll check that out. That wasn't my principal reason. My principal reason for buying Grok is because of the multi-agent like thing, where it literally spawns out four different agents, and they go do their research and they talk, and then they consolidate. And I'm like, that's interesting. That's interesting.
So Scott, what I'm wondering here is, let's say you know how this machine works. How
Okay.
do you think that changes the actual prompt you make?
Because it's my underlying belief that if I understand the true nature of something, that I'll be able to interact with it in a better way. Because I'll under okay. For instance, let me go down an example. Right. So I got cats. I got too many freaking cats, man. I got three cats inside and I three cats outside. So the idea is I have a general understanding just by living with cats in my house for well over 20 years, right? So I kind of understand the core nature of a cat and how a cat, I don't know how he thinks, but I can kind of derive how he thinks based upon how he responds to different stimulus. So I've sort of got a model of I think I can predict how this cat's going to behave in certain things. Now, every cat that I have is different. They're still cats, but each has its own unique personality. Some are more friendly than others. Some love food, others could care less about food. So I need to learn that individual cat as well. Where am I going with this? So, anyways, my thought is that if I understand my cats, I'm not going to try to get the cat to change its behavior based upon what I want. I'm going to, uh-oh, something happened. I want to try to figure out what will make the cat do what I want him to do.
Wait, just it says your device changed.
I don't know.
It started a new recording for you due to a change in your device. Okay, anyway.
Crazy. I don't know. Something happened. Weird. Okay.
Hey, go ahead. So if you want to learn so that you don't make it do what you want, I restate that.
No. I want to make it do what I want it to do, but I can't tell it do this because I said so. It's like I've got to give something appealing to it, right? Like here's like one example just to clarify that. Like if I want the cat to come to me, sometimes it does, 99% of the times it doesn't. But like I know Dudley loves food, so we got a little treat bag. If I just shake that treat bag, that freaking cat will come running, right? Because it wants the treat. So if I want the cat to come to me, I gotta bribe it with a treat. I understand that. Diva, that does not work for her. I've got to use different techniques for her. And so that's what I'm hoping to do is try to understand the nature of this thing. I'll be able to get it to do what I want it to do and want to do it because it's getting what it wants, right? Or it's getting what it needs. That's what I'm trying to understand.
So I don't know, how does that change your prompting?
Because just through by trial and error and by talking to it, I understand. I'm starting to build correlations in my brain. I'm getting trained based upon, oh, that thing works, that doesn't work. These two things together work really well, and so I'm training myself. I'm learning what things work. I'm just pressing buttons, and then I'm like, oh, that button actually turns the light on. Oh,
okay, but you've got a goal as I want the output to be this.
yeah,
right? I want the output to be X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Can't you get there just by prompting it now and iterating your prompts and refining your prompts?
Well, that's what I'm doing, but it doesn't always give me what I want. Just like the frustrations you were having, it's like you don't always get it. So
you have a belief. So first of all, we have to say you can't get what you want with the current prompting, and you have a belief that you can if you understand the way the machine works.
I can get closer, yeah, if I understand it. Yes, exactly. Just like
couldn't you get closer by better prompting?
Yeah, but I don't know what to prompt.
Okay.
I mean, I can get there by trial and error. I can get there by using prompt examples that other people have. Those are helpful. But what I'm trying to do, Chris, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use first principles to reason up.
Do you have an output that is ideal? This is the output I'm looking for.
When I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, but I don't know it until I see it. Yeah.
So it's not consistent.
It's not consistent, and it's constantly moving. I'm constantly wanting different things because as soon as I get the answer, just like you, as soon as I get the answer, hey, give me the percentage of conservatives and liberals who own guns, and I'll just give you an answer. Poof. This is the data. Like, oh, interesting. Okay. Then I want to start digging in. Well, why? Why do more Republicans have guns than Democrats? Why is this thing politically polarizing? It's a freaking gun. It's like, why would it matter? And then those are the questions where my mind goes. It's like, why would it matter? It's like, why would it matter? Like, if it does matter, I don't think it does. Like, why would it matter? Like, let's say a Republican had more knives for cutting up tomatoes in the kitchen than Democrats. I'm like, I wouldn't have expected to see that distinction, but let's say there is a distinction there. I don't think there is. But then I want to know why is the different philosophies care about a knife? I mean, these are things, because then if I can understand that, I'm better able to predict in different cases.
So take that up a level. Yeah. What are you expecting from them? So you're going to be asking it why. What are you expecting as a result from
Well,
that?
what I want, and I know this is completely unreasonable, I just want to get the exact answer in the way I want it every single time with the minimum amount of work possible.
So
That's
the
what I
exact answer is you want the exact answer to the previous question?
know to whatever I'm asking in a way that I'll completely understand it. That's what I want. Now, I
Okay.
know that's radically unreasonable, but that's what
So
I want.
if you can explain to it how you think, how you process information, how
Yeah.
you like if you understand yourself well enough to write
Well,
it
that's
down.
another problem, right? Yeah,
No,
that's
no,
another.
I'm but you see what I'm saying? If you understand yourself well enough to write it down, you can prompt it and say, "This is how you need to present information to me."
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And I think, yeah,
I'm just trying to think. I don't know that. I don't know that understanding how how the circuits work in the back end, and not circuits, but you know what I mean.
well, whatever it
Um,
is, yeah, exactly.
yeah, is going to change that because it's the filter layer that's going to present the information to you, and how it presents to you it sounds like is very important. So telling it how it needs to present information to you is, I think, a critical piece of that. So if you have an example of an output, say this is an output that really rang true for me. It connected on many levels. It connected because it hit me emotionally. It showed vulnerability. It
Yeah,
gave me more than one option. You call out the things about it that you liked, and codify that, and then write down and do a master prompt. This is
yeah.
how you interact with me. When I ask you a question, this is how I want the answer to come.
And I do that to some extent. And maybe that's all I need to do, but I feel like I need to do that and understand how it works. I feel like if I understand both sides, I'll get better answers faster. That's my assumption.
The problem I've got is, since you don't have any way to tell what the training is, what data it has access to, any of that sort of thing. There's so many variables there that knowing how it thinks, I don't quite see the ROI on it. I get why you're doing it. I
Yeah,
get the thinking behind why
okay.
you were doing it. I just, to me, the ROI
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
seem
fair.
to be
Yeah.
there.
And it may not be there. I'm still stuck on that I believe that's the right answer, but you could be right. That could there
Yep.
could be a better
I
answer.
mean, knowing how it works in general is, to me, is better. Always, always,
Yeah, yeah,
always.
right. We
Right?
started the podcast with that point,
Yeah.
right?
So now we're on different sides. I'm saying the ROI is not there. Uh, but I think because I think you understand how it works at a high level.
Ah, boy, man, I have a white belt understanding at best.
Yeah,
Maybe a little
considering
bit
most people don't even have a belt, then you're
yeah.
it's and I wonder conceptually, because if you're are you how deep would you want to go into this? Do you want to start going into algorithms? Do you want to start going into calculations? Do you want to start going into how the numeric aspects of how this is calculating stuff out? Because that you can go down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah, I don't want to become a PhD in computer science. I mean, I would love to, but it's like that's not my outcome. My outcome is to sell shit
So
for pennies.
this to me, it feels like you're trying to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to because it's fun because this it's just like my nature is I'm a curious dude just like you are, right? We're we're
Yep.
we're both we both have that shiny object syndrome because it's fun. And so I would rather do that than sit there and watch Netflix for 2 hours every night. Because for me, and to a large part, Chris, this is entertainment for me. This is
Hmm.
entertainment that, and I justify it by saying, well, this has the potential. If I'm supposed to be an expert in AI, um, this is going to at least help push me forward being an expert, aka which it doesn't take much to be an expert in AI right now. All you got to know is a little bit more than the other dude, right? Which his knowledge is even worse than yours. So
That was
it
one of
doesn't
the
take
things in
much.
the 4 Hour Work Week, that
Mhm.
book, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And one of the things he talks about is, there are things that you know well enough that you can be an expert in it. If you
yeah.
know,
Right.
if you're better than 80% of the population, you're in the top 20%. You're an expert.
You're an
So
expert.
yeah,
Yeah,
that he would
right.
say, go out and rent out a hall and give a presentation or a speech on it.
Yeah,
That's what he
yeah,
would say.
yeah. Right, 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 right. And I think where I'm past now is I'm past my immediate amazement because I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. You could just type this thing in and check it out, right? It's awesome what it produces. And I'm past that initial like coolness, this is so cool thing. Now I'm like, okay, now I got to use this thing as a tool. How am I going to use this? Because I believe that this is what I believe, Chris. I believe that the ROI is worth it because having a deep understanding of how LLM works and how to talk to it and get information could be a long-term strategic advantage for me.
So one of the things, and I would agree with that. I'm going to reiterate something we said earlier today, and I think we said before, is the AI is going to wipe out many jobs, right? We know that. And the types of jobs we're talking about is right now, most of the US and most of, I would say, the developed world, a lot of the developed world has service jobs.
Yeah, right.
Or has, no, call it, they're knowledge jobs in essence,
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
right? And a knowledge job is where you have specific knowledge to be able to perform your tasks,
To do a
right?
specific
A
task,
loan
right?
processor is a knowledge job, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A radiologist who reads the X-rays, that's a
Yeah, right.
knowledge
Mm-hmm.
job. Even to some extent, your cashier is a knowledge job because they have
Yeah.
to know what they're doing, right? And but there's not a lot of thinking involved because someone went to the effort of building a process and a procedure for you
Yeah.
to follow, so you don't have to think much.
Yeah. Right.
So by taking out the element of thinking, they've taken out a lot of the risk associated with having people actually think and make mistakes.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is now AI can do all those jobs very easily.
Yes, right.
So those jobs are up for grabs in the near future. The jobs that stay though are the ones that still require you to think, to give
Yeah,
your
right.
opinion, to give
Right,
your
right.
logic, and so it's it's the same jobs but with a layer of thinking attached to it. It's the same knowledge job, but when you get to a high enough level, you're actually doing thinking beyond it. You're no longer
Yes.
doing the customer
Yes.
service at the base level. You're handling the escalations that come up to you,
Yes.
right? You're
Yes.
handling the one-offs, the exceptions, because it requires a level of thought process. And
Yes.
so I think what you're doing is you're trying to tap into, in my mind, how to refine thinking, not
Yes.
knowledge, how to refine thinking.
Yes. Right.
Right. And that's so when I see people build all these cool tools on N8N and Zapier and all these other automation tools out there, I go, oh yeah, I've got an agent, and I go out to Chat GPT, or I go over to whatever, and it does a call and it gets information through an API, and I'm like, yeah, but chat produces crap if the input's crap.
Yeah. Right. 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 Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you've got a process or a procedure that you would normally have a lower level person doing,
Yeah.
the output that chat's going to get is going to be pretty similar to that. It's not
Yeah.
going to be
Right.
the incredible high. So if you really want to have tools that really leverage people's ability to think, critically think, and
Yeah.
to analyze and synthesize data
Yes.
and actually be creative with that, you
Yes.
need to level up the output from the LLMs,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
So garbage in, garbage out, right? You can take the smartest person in the world. If you're giving him crap, you're going to get
Yeah.
crap out of them.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
really, I get the goal of what you're doing. I think we really need what you really need to have access to is an unfettered AI.
Well, and that's one of the reason I went to Grok. I went to Mustang because he has removed some of the guardrails. He's still got plenty of guardrails up because boy, if somebody with one wrong thing, whatever his Hitler thing or whatever, that just really hurt the company. So,
Have you seen the little panda-ish character or whatever? So there's two of these characters that you can deal with. And one of them is this female anime character. Another one's this little cartoon, I don't know, teddy bear, whatever it is. And they have him saying all kinds of horrible things. I mean, all the filth coming out of its mouth is incredible.
okay, I got to check that out because that could be entertainment. I got to be careful with that though because I don't mind the entertainment, but I don't want to be 100% entertainment. I need to make sure that I'm learning and
Well,
entertaining at the same time.
so I know like a lot of people will run weaker versions of some of these models in their own systems at home, right?
Yeah,
It'll
yeah,
be a much weaker, much slower system, but
yeah,
then they don't have to worry about tokens and costs and
yeah,
APIs and all that. Well,
yeah,
the APIs you just have to worry about, but
yeah,
they don't have to worry about a lot of the backend stuff. Also, it allows you to put it into topics that may not be
yeah,
uh, that may be considered sensitive, right? So
yeah.
it's
Right,
it kind of
right,
answer.
right.
I do think that the true thinkers will need to have access to databases or to AI that is less fettered, and the guardrails have to come from the person, not from the tool.
Yeah, and I think that will ultimately happen down the road. I think you'll be able to probably pay extra money for it because if they can productize it, they will. And you have to sign some sort of NDA or agreement saying that, listen, this is raw, unfiltered information. It's your responsibility to fact check this, right? So, because who knows what's going to come out of it. And the guardrails are taken off. And, it's like driving a motorcycle. It's like, hey, man, we've just really upped your chance of killing yourself. So so we don't get liability. You got to sign your life away. You got to sign. That's okay. I'll take the motorcycle, right? Because I get more performance, but there's way more risk as well too.
Yeah, and until the state comes in and says that you can't have access to that, and then we got other problems, right?
That's a different problem actually. But in my mind, Chris, I think I'm a big boy. I think I can. I think I can. Um, I, I have enough values and a judgment and experience to say that's bad for me. I'm not going to go down that road. I think that would be destructive. So I'm not going to go down that line of thinking.
Okay, let's you and I can create us an AI ethics certificate. And what we'll do is, and we'll create this, and then we'll have people test, and we'll have to have an actual manual interview with them to review their it's like a psych review, and if they get that certificate, then we'll let them they can go to Grok and say I get unfettered access from our certificate.
And you put in this special access code, and all of a sudden all the system prompts go away. It's like, this is it, baby. You got. It's not like, remember the old, like there would be certain I think Netscape or certain providers that would give you access to the internet, but it had heavy guardrails around it. And I'm like,
well, the old days, you didn't even get outside their network, right? I mean, AOL or whatever in the early days, you were on AOL, you weren't on the internet.
Yeah. And I always thought, man, I don't want that. I want the internet. I want the unfettered, good, bad, ugly, everything there. I want to.
Not everyone can process that.
Not everyone can process, and I don't know that I can fully process it either. But it's like, that's what I want,
But considering how much vile and horrible stuff is on the internet anymore, I don't know. I'm not sure I'd want that to come up too easily.
No, and Chris, I don't think we should give that to a 13-year-old, right? Because they're, I mean, at my age, almost 60 years old, I've got more guardrails built in, but still at that same, I'm still able to be attacked. So I've got to still be careful what goes in my brain. But I think I'm less inclined to fall for, and especially being trained in marketing and understanding most of the tricks, I'm probably less inclined. But I got to be careful with that because that's ego. And man, pride cometh before the fall. So I'm also, that program's solid and strong in me as well too. So I'm gonna be very careful,
Yeah, I don't know. It's, to me, I really think that the whole thing about prompting, and maybe we end up with so many varieties of prompting, right? Because prompting we talk about right now is like kind of just a monolithic thing, but maybe there's empathic prompting, maybe there's analytical prompting, maybe there's spiritual prompting. I don't know, right? But you could end up with, just like we have different languages. Actually, how does prompting work in a foreign language?
I don't know.
I wonder if you would give the same prompt in 2 or 3 different languages, how the quality of output changes.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know Japanese, right? So you could. I can't test that.
Yeah, I just conceptually, I'm wondering, does it use a different source of data? Right. If I ask you, what is America's favorite food, or what is America's favorite food, and I ask it in the U.S. and I ask it in Japan, would it give me the same answer? Is it using the same sources of data, or would the Japanese one go to Japanese sources of data? It's an interesting thought.
Well, I don't know. Use a VPN. That's easy to test, actually.
Well, no, I'm just wondering, does it, since it doesn't care what the language is once it's got the context to be able to understand it and translate it.
Well, I think the more important thing, this is why I said use a VPN, is your location matters.
I get that. I got that part of it, but I'm thinking here, like, all right, I say, what is America's favorite food? And that breaks it down into tokens. Yeah, if I say that in another language, it breaks it down into different tokens because it's different words, different languages. So
Yeah.
when it goes out and does the pattern recognition and looks for probability, is it looking for the probability in the language it's in, or does it default translate everything into English so that it's using the same words?
That I don't know. I would assume
Your search
I'm just
results would vary.
yeah, I'm talking out of my ass, so you gotta understand that. I would assume that if the language models are trained in the U.S., like the U.S. models, it'd probably be better to talk to it in English. I would say if you're using DeepSeek and other models trained outside, maybe another language might be a better option. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're all trained in English, actually. But
Possibly.
the thing I'm saying is, pattern recognition works and saying, okay, here's the words, favorite food, okay, and then it's going to go out there and it's going to look for pattern recognition against favorite food.
Yeah,
But
correct.
if you say that in another language, does it know to say does it come back with answers in English as well as answers in whatever language it was asked in, or does it only come back with answers in the language it was asked in? Because that
Well, I
would
don't
limit
know.
that would limit that would limit it heavily what the source of data is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could assume that, oh, if you're asking this in Japanese, you probably want to know what the Japanese favorite food is. I mean, it may
I w-
imply that, right?
so I'm wondering if you were to ask a question saying, I want you to ask this question
Yeah,
in these 10 languages
yeah,
and give me
right.
the response,
Yeah, that'd be cool test. Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
see if the response varies or if it's identical.
yeah. You have to say like, this is what I want. Translate this into these 10 languages and ask this in that native tongue,
Yes,
and then translate that back to English.
get the
Yeah,
response in the native tongue,
and then translate
and
the
then
English.
reverse translate it back into English.
Yeah, right, right,
Yeah,
right.
and I might even want to reverse translate it back in English outside of the AI just to see.
Yeah, right, 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 right. Yeah, that'd be a good test. I don't know, test it, man. That'd be kind of fun to do. I don't have any interest in that. I'm other than just general curiosity, but yeah,
Well,
that'd be
if
kind of
if if you end up with certain cultures that have more knowledge in certain fields than English speaking fields, it might be worth bringing, especially with
cool.
spirituality, Buddhism, Islam,
Yeah,
something like that. You might want to ask questions in languages that
yeah.
have a lot of people that do that.
Well, so I studied Greek a little bit. I mean, there's just some different concepts in Greek. Like they view time differently in certain things. So it's like there's never, and this is what's so mind-boggling, there's never just this word translates to this exactly. It's like, well, the closest translation is this, but then I need to give a few caveats to get you to fully understand. Because you need to understand it from their culture as well, too. And
I did a
so
whole
all that,
deep dive earlier this year. I think it was towards the beginning of the year, where I tried to construct my own mathematics system. I went into AI and I said, okay, we got base 10, we got binary, we got base 8, base 12, 16, whatever.
yeah,
I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
so how would this? And I said, how much of this affects our thinking? How much of
yeah,
the
yeah,
fact that our base 10 is our default affects the way we think? So I
yeah. I
said,
think so. Yeah,
if another culture came down and they were base 5, would I
yeah,
be able
right.
to communicate with them? And so we were theorizing all these things, and I was like, how do I count in base 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
That's it.
1 is 6,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. So I was trying to figure out a lot of that stuff. It was interesting because I these are the conversations I often have with AI. I will sit
yeah,
there and say,
yeah.
I got this idea that what happens in this situation, what happens in that situation, or I'll ask it a question saying, is the IQ test biased?
Of course it is. Yeah, everything's
So I
biased.
want I have my opinion on it. I want to hear what it says, and then
Yeah,
it'll
no,
tell me
exactly.
whatever. All right, and then I'll delve down into one of the topics and say, oh, yeah, well, do the people who invented the IQ test always score higher?
Yeah, right. I would. Yeah, could be. I don't know. And you can listen to different
Culturally,
nonsense.
whoever invented it, right? So
Yeah, yeah, that's
there's just
interesting. I would think though, if you're talking about ROI, I think what that would be a lower ROI than what I'm trying to do.
which one?
The one I'm trying to how to get it to think and how to be able to talk to it more effectively. Could you question the
But
ROI? I'm
but
like, yeah, it could be.
so no, my question to you would be: you've got an assumption that it has the information, and what I said about the language actually then is a way to verify whether it actually has information. If it has different sets of information depending on the type of input you put in. If you ask a question in Japanese and you get a different answer than if you ask the answer in English, that means that you do not have the same data sets that it's working off.
Well, cool. Can you run the test then?
I could.
because I think I'd be interested. Listen, I'd really be interested in hearing the answer, but I don't want to spend the time because I don't think it's that
Yeah.
important. But I'd be very curious to know.
Well, maybe after I work on the shorts and everything else that we got to work on for the channel and stuff,
Yeah,
we'll
always
figure
work
something
to
out.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So I'm feeling like we're ready to wrap up here, Chris. What do you think about just
Yeah.
wrapping this thing up?
I felt like we didn't wander as much as we normally do.
Well, that's because I didn't feel like arguing with you. I mean, I always want to argue a little bit, but it's like I was coming from a more of a place of curiosity. Like, listen, I really want to know the answer to this.
Well, you agreed with me a lot more than normal too, so.
Well, yeah, because I was curious, and I mean, you have a good way of thinking about things. I'm not saying your thinking is always right, but it's like I need to understand your way of thinking, and I need to understand my way of thinking, and then I need to ultimately what I need to understand is given this particular problem, what line of thinking would give me my best answer, right?
One thing that I'm always trying to understand is I think I have a very good way of thinking things through that's
Okay,
very flexible that allows me to adapt to whatever comes at me that
okay,
doesn't fit in that so I can rework my mental model to accept the new information very
okay.
quickly. However, because I think that, I'm wondering what I'm missing in the sense that um like we get very defensive of ourselves, right? Like if I go and you're not open to it and I start attacking the way you think on something, you're going to get defensive and you're going to defend an opinion or whatever, right? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's just my
so
bias,
is
right?
is
Yeah.
is my is my belief that I can adapt to any of these? Is that my version of that? Of
Of
just
course,
writing it
yeah,
off, saying, "Oh
yeah,
no, no, I can adapt to anything you throw at me."
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
how much of that's valid and how much of that's ego? That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, that I don't know. So I will say absolutely. It's like, but how much of a hindrance is that? And you not had this question is when is it a hindrance? Because it could be highly effective in certain cases and really bad in other cases. Like in
I-
jujitsu, it's like not every technique works in every scenario. You need to be smart enough to understand who your opponent is, the size difference, the power difference, just when to apply what technique and how to apply it. All that matters. All that matters, and so context matters a lot.
yeah, I just quite often it's I can very much explain away anything negative,
Yeah,
but by being able to do that, am I then accepting the negative is okay?
I mean it's possible. I don't know what percentage that is, but I'll tell you how to test it, Chris. This is why jujitsu is so powerful, is because everything gets pressure tested. I think I'm the best at, let's say, doing an arm bar. I'm just going to give an example, right? Well, I'm going to go roll with 10 people, and I'm going to try to apply that arm bar to 10 people, and I'm going to find out really quickly just how good I actually am at applying arm bars, right?
Hmm.
I could know that in maybe 30 minutes, how good I am. I'm like, wow, crap! I only got 3 out of 10 arm bars on people. I'm not as good as I thought I was. and,
I,
and
I
and
just
that
I,
was
I just
ego.
think self-awareness in and of itself can be the excuse, is what I'm getting at.
Man, it's possible. It's possible. But as a general rule, I think the more self-aware you are, generally the better off you're going to be, right?
I agree. Self-awareness is better than not having self-awareness, but I
Yeah,
also can
right.
see I can intellectualize through self-awareness and just make an excuse for anything, any bad behavior I have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Elon Musk made a comment about this. That dude is so insightful sometimes. So he's like, when we're building rockets or whatever it was, he's like, our models are so good. I mean, we're able to predict reality so well. If we run a test and we don't get what the model predicts, and where we first go is maybe we didn't set the test up right. And I'm like, okay, that's confidence in your model prediction. That's crazy. But he says at the same time, the ultimate test is reality. Because
Um,
reality wins every single time.
so that comment, by the way, doesn't wow me. I would expect if you're going to build anything, you better have a damn good model of it before you build it.
Well, I thought it was really insightful. Well, yeah, yeah.
No,
I
but what I'm
know.
getting is, to me, that's a default thought I have is like you want to understand, you want to mimic reality to the best of your ability in your
To the
lab
best of your
environment,
ability. Right, right, right,
right?
right.
And honestly, most people don't do a very good job of anything. Most people
No.
get to a certain level and that's good enough, and they stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where is your level of good enough compared to everyone around you?
Yeah, right.
Right?
Exactly. So that's why you've got to test against it. So I may be equal to another blue belt, and I can hold my own against a blue belt. Now I go against a black belt, freaking good luck. It doesn't matter what I do. I'm dead every single time, you know? And then even if you become a black belt, now you go up against the master, it freaking doesn't matter. He's going to destroy and eat you for lunch every single time. So man, there's levels to this stuff, you know?
Yeah, I'm not quite seeing the connection to his quote, but okay.
Because there's levels to that. There's levels that he's so confident in his model, and he's probably ran so many tests and he's thought through this so clearly that it's not hyperbole in that case. It's actual truth, which that's the part that's so insightful to me is holy crap. He trusts his model so much that he's going to first pick apart reality and how we set the not reality. He's picking apart how we set the test up. That's what he's picking apart.
Yeah, but so going back to probability thinking, right? Thinking of the different things that could happen. He's got his model to a point where he thinks it mimics reality to where he can say, I'm 99.9% sure this is going to work.
Yeah, highly
the work,
confident.
the way the real world works.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He acknowledges there's a 0.1% chance it might not work that way because
Right.
And there's no way to know until you do it in reality.
Yes. Right.
Until you do it, until it happens, you can't be 100% sure that it would work.
Right. Exactly.
Right? You can.
At some
And
point,
anyone who says it is either misrepresenting it, doesn't understand it, or is simplifying it for your sake.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's no shortage of actually flying the airplane, the actual airplane.
Yeah.
Right?
So when he says I'm 99.9% sure of my models, I'm like, good, you got good models.
Yeah, you got good models. Yeah.
Right. But he's also not saying he's never saying I'm 100% sure of my models.
No.
He's enough of a scientist or the engineer to understand that the only true test is reality.
Only true test is reality. And so, but his comment was so insightful. He's so confident in his models, probably because there's been so many tests run that the model wins almost every single time. He's not arguing against reality. He's saying that we probably didn't set the test up properly then.
Well, so I think the idea is because I'm sure in their thinking they've gone back to first principles. They've built up from the bottom, so they don't have extraneous stuff in the way that's getting getting in the process, is getting in the procedures, and they're confident that what they worked on was accurate.
Yes,
the principles they worked off of were accurate, and as they worked up, they were confident that every layer of thinking that went into it was not just valid, but was likely to be true.
Yeah,
maybe
and
I don't know if you can say it's 100% true. Maybe it is something you could say that's always the way this works, or maybe you can say it's just 99% true. I don't know.
Well, no, you can't say it always works because his shit blows up all the time, right? So I mean,
no. I'm talking about a lower level, saying that this thing this lower piece always works this way.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because that's a systems test. That's the whole thing.
So because you're building up from the bottom, right? And so the bottom is like the base factual stuff that you've got, the things. You work up a step. Now there's some thinking involved, there's some analysis, there's some assumptions, there's whatever, right? And now you're starting into probability. Okay, so there's a 99% chance that it's going to work this way. And then layer up, there's a 99% chance it's going to work this way. Eventually, those 1% error rates add up towards when you get towards the top after you go to multiple levels. But maybe you can get to a confidence level where you can say, no, it is going to happen this way at the lower level. That's just a given. It's going to be this way. Right? 100 out of 100 times. 100 out of 100 times, this is the way it's going to work.
Right. Exactly. And it's like to me, build a house, right? You build a foundation, and you got to make sure the foundation is right before you start building other stuff on it. Because, if the foundation fails, the whole house is at risk at that point.
Mm-hmm. But I think the idea there is knowing that you started from the bottom, knowing that you validated along the way.
Yes. Right.
And knowing what the error rates at each level were. When you get to the final product, you go, yeah, no, we are confident this is going to work.
Yeah, right.
But we're not, yeah, we're not going to say 100% because Mother Nature always has a way of getting involved. Mother
That's
Nature,
why there's
nature,
lots of
universe,
fluff
whatever,
sometimes. Yeah, right.
universal
Right.
laws.
Right. Yeah. There's no. Just like jujitsu, man. It's like you can watch all the YouTube videos and you think you're so awesome, but until you actually get in the ring with somebody else with some significant skill, you don't know for certain if it works or not.
Mhm. Well, I think we're gone over time. I think we need to ask everyone to comment. We keep forgetting to do that in the middle because we just get involved in the conversations.
Yeah, that's
Please
right.
comment. It helps us on the channel, but also we want to hear what you say. Uh, Hopefully you got some ideas for us. But yeah, say whatever you want, call us
Yeah,
idiots.
whatever
It's
you want.
fine.
And I know Chris's favorite thing is always comment and tell me why I particularly am wrong. So go ahead and do that. Please put those into the comments,
Yes,
actually.
Scott. He means I. He
Me,
means
yeah,
Scott. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, and then also go ahead and stroke Chris's ego and tell him how great he is and how right he is and all this stuff.
Yeah. How right I am in my understanding. I've got the perfect model of the world in my head. And also, please subscribe. Give us ideas of anything you want to talk about or thoughts on this. I don't know if we've gone, and we went pretty deep in the topic. I don't know if we went pretty broad on the topic, or we spent a lot of time on the topic. I don't know how
We
deep we
spend a
actually
lot of
went.
time, yeah, because that's where my head is right now, and this is the number one problem I'm trying to solve, how to use this tool effectively.
I think there's, so not talking about you specifically, but I think there's a broad range of people who just do not interact at all with any AI tools at all, and I really think they're missing out on something here. It's like the
You think
people who
so?
didn't get a smartphone for years and were using the flip phone,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I mean, I think the gateway drug to all this is buy the $20 version of ChatGPT. That's probably the best starting point, right? And then just
Yeah,
go from
but I
there.
think it's also just shifting. Like we were talking earlier. I mean, I don't Google much anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah, it's much easier to open a chat and just start
you
having
got
an
a better
interactive
tool.
conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly
So
right. And let me add one more thing, Chris, so we can wrap this up. Is man, if you think he'd be a great guest, when I say man, I mean human being, man, woman, doesn't matter actually. As long as you can think critically, as long as you got your ego in check at least a little bit, we'd welcome you to come
yeah,
on the show. Come chat with us.
I don't think you have to think that critically. As long as you got your ego in check, you're okay. But
Yeah,
I think they kind of go hand in hand. Hey,
yeah,
just say
yeah.
it.
Because we're gonna like if you say something we don't like, trust me, we're gonna pressure test you right live. So which could be us. Some people love that and some people don't. But if you're one of those people that love to hang out with us, we'd love to have you on the show.
Yeah, cool.
And in fact,
All
Chris,
righty.
what I'd like to do is I'd like to be getting where at some point where we have guests more often than we don't have a guest.
I think that would be ideal, and I think as we do that, we can probably come up with some areas of conversation that we want to be consistent on. So we ask
Yeah,
people about, how they think or how they deal with certain situations or the like, because I think all that's useful, particularly when we see more than just the two of us giving our opinion of how
yeah,
we handle things.
right. Because the problem is if we just start talking, we're gonna get what do they call that? We're gonna when people get together in like a in the
Echo
silo.
chamber?
Or, yeah,
Echo
we're
chamber.
gonna create our own echo chamber is the problem. So we need to be challenged
But
on
that's
topics.
okay. I have a very big echo chamber, so I can
There you
fill it with
go.
I can fill it with a lot of stuff before I start hearing the same stuff over and over
Okay,
again.
there you go. But it's still an echo chamber, so we
Yeah.
like to expand our thinking as well too.
All right. Well, thank
Well,
you all. Give us comments, subscribe, do whatever else, and see you next week.
yeah. See you next week. All right.